a.m. 2023. I'd like to call to order with a very brief roll call. Commissioner Rich Regovich.
Here.
Treasurer Mike Zurin.
Present.
And I too am present. So the first motion I will entertain is for approval of the minutes of our meeting on January 12th, 2023.
I'll make the motion.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Our minutes are adopted unanimously. Do we have any old business from last meeting to discuss?
No.
None here.
Hearing none, we'll go on to new business, beginning with our investment review by Regional Director Eileen Stanek of Meter Investment Management to update us on our county savings.
Well, thank you very much. And I know before we get started, I think there was some information that Mike, Treasurer Zurin.
Is your microphone on?
No, it's not. Sorry. There we go. No, maybe not. Okay. Is that working?
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay, sure. Sorry about that. Yeah, so certainly another interesting quarter, and I know Treasurer Zurin, did you want to kick off this with a few comments first?
Sure. Thank you. I just wanted to thank Eileen Stanek from Meter for all her expertise and guidance with the county investments. We have really done well. We have looked at corporate bonds as investments. We've really focused in on maturity dates with with cash that we've moved into investments, and also maturity of bonds that have paid very little over the last 3 or 4 years, and we have significantly increased the return of investment. I think it's probably gone up about 300% from last year with what the county is seeing in investment return, and I just wanted to thank Eileen for all her hard work and her expertise and her guidance.
Well, thank you very much. I certainly appreciate that, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to be able to serve as a resource for the Treasurer's Office as well as for Lake County, and help to make this all possible from the standpoint of positioning the county's monies to maximize the returns. For when we think in terms of that process as we work with the county's funds, we want to always keep in mind that our investment objectives are safety, liquidity, and return. And so those are first and foremost where our focus is. And then additionally, looking at the economic cycle and what is happening with interest rates, positioning the portfolios to the point that, as Treasurer Zurin said, we can capitalize on higher interest rates when they do occur, and therefore provide additional income to the county. And I think the key point there is positioning the portfolios so that that income can become more sustainable and not necessarily subject to the ups and downs that do occur within the investment markets. So with that being said, jumping into what we are seeing here in the marketplace, we did have the Federal Reserve meet again last month. They did proceed with raising short-term interest rates by another 0.25%. Expectations are that they will at least do one more rate hike in 2023. This chart that we have in front of us is what is called the dot plot. This is where the members of the interest rate setting committee put forth their estimate of where they believe that overnight rate should be, where it should be appropriate over time. We've compared the orange dots, which is their forecast from December, and now their most recent forecast in March. They do update these forecasts quarterly, and we can see, looking at 2023, there's pretty much a consensus that that overnight rate will move up to 5.25%. On the top range, but then as we look at the placement of the dots going on in 2024 and 2025, we can see that the expectations are that the Fed will be in a position to start cutting interest rates in 2024 and further rate cuts in 2025. Clearly, as we have all seen, higher interest rates from an investor perspective are very positive because, yes, we are able to reinvest those maturities and earn additional income, but from a borrower standpoint, it does increase the cost of providing goods and services and ultimately can translate into slower economic growth. And that is really what the Fed's objective is to slow that demand for goods and services, slow economic growth, so that in turn that can lower inflation, which, as we may recall, peaked in the summer of 2022, has been on a trend of dropping, but is still significantly higher than the Fed's long-run target of 2%. Now, the market does have their own opinion of what the Fed will do, and this is what's reflected on this chart here. This is the Fed Funds Futures plotted, and Fed Funds Futures are where the market is expressing their opinion on where that overnight rate will land. We can see that purplish line. This was kind of our base point coming into 2023, where the market was expecting that the Fed would get rates up to the levels that they are today, and then start to cut rates. We then had a very strong job reports and very strong continuing inflation numbers in March, early March, and that reset the market's expectations that the Fed would need to raise rates higher. The Fed has been very persistent in their message. They have more work to do as it relates to combating inflation. But that still the trend would be when we got into 2024 that rates would be off their peaks of what we would experience in 2023. This was all rather disrupted on March 20th when we had the banking crisis with the Silicon Valley Bank failure, as well as the failure of a Signature Bank and Credit Suisse, which was a long-standing investment firm, being an international firm, being acquired by UBS. And so clearly this highlighted the negative impact that can occur when interest rates rise as rapidly as they did in 2022, and the stresses that this has placed on the banking industry. And as a result, the market's expectations, as well as the Fed's opinion, is that this crisis will serve to, by on its own organically, we would say, also slow economic activity as banks then tighten up their credit conditions and financial conditions. And we've started to see some small signs of that. We think that will take some time to evolve. And then additionally, we would not be surprised to see an increase in some of the banking regulations as well. So that being said, our theme, our trend, as we look at where the level of interest rates are, is that we're in a good spot today, but the risk is more present that interest rates will drop. Our next piece we just want to touch on, if I can get this to move, hold on. Okay, is what's just kind of what has happened to interest rates as a result of this. The top chart is just showing the yield on the two-year Treasury. The two-year Treasury is a benchmark security in our world of where we can invest with a maximum maturity of 5 years. We can see on that blue line that, of course, things were very dire in the 2020 through 2021 period, where interest rates were extremely low, and then as the Fed raised rates and we came out of COVID and back to work, and demand for goods and services escalated, interest rates rose considerably throughout 2022, and from an investment standpoint, that's really where we started to add additional funds into the county's investment portfolio to lock in some rates, as well as doing some extension to the extent we had maturities and the like to lock in those current rates. Rates have dropped, but as we can see looking at this chart, we are still in a much better interest rate environment than where we have been over the past 5 years. The bottom chart shows the volatility in that yield on that benchmark security, and we can see that looking at just the range of those bars, that there's been extreme volatility on these interest rates, and that's generally reflective of when we're in a market environment where there sometimes is not a clear path on where things are headed, as well as at turning points in interest rate policy. And from our standpoint, volatility does create opportunities from the standpoint of as we execute the investment strategy. Labor market has been a point that has also been, I would say, rather sticky from the standpoint of a strong labor market. This is the non-farm payrolls, the job creation on a national basis, and the 3-month moving average is the orange line. We can see certainly in 2021-22 there was significant job growth. That has dropped, but it's still at very strong levels. And from the standpoint of a slowing economy, what our outlook would be as far as the impact on the job growth, we would anticipate that job growth will start to decrease over time here throughout 2023. And we think that we are starting to see some signs of that, particularly when we look at the job openings numbers, which was released in the what's called the JOLTS report, which is a survey of the job market. The number of jobs open is still elevated at 9.6 million jobs, but that's down from well over 10 million jobs earlier this year. So that trend has already started. We've also started to see an increase in the claims for unemployment insurance as companies have started to right-size their staffing. We know the story on the tech side, tech industry overhired during work from home time period, had the anecdotal evidence is hired folks and then they had nothing to do, but they still paid them. And so we have seen significant layoffs in the tech industry, but we've also seen some of that trend filter over into more of our services industries and industrials as well. So clearly, this is something that we believe is picking up momentum. One more, come on. Okay, what this has done for interest rates, as we can see here, this is the U.S. Treasury yield curve. Bottom line is a year ago, March of 2022. The turquoise line is where interest rates were at the end of March. We can see, as we had pointed out, with just looking at the 2-year Treasury, when we isolated that, we can see that interest rates are still much higher than where they were in a year ago, but they are down from the peak, and the peak on rates was in October of 2022, which is the orange line. It's interesting when we look at the shape of the yield curve, primarily from, say, the 2-year out longer term. Back in October, the yield curve was relatively flat, looking at that measure, meaning that the yield that one could earn on a 2-year security versus a 10-year or 5-year was pretty similar. We contrast that to the shape of that yield curve today, the turquoise line, and we look at the level of the 2-year Treasury relative to the 10-year Treasury, and the yield curve is inverted. And so therefore, what that means is when we're reinvesting funds, yes, the short-term rates are higher, but the longer-term rates are lower. But an inverted yield curve is a reliable indicator of conditions likely to result in a recession or in the next 12 to 18 months. And so, as we know, historically, when the economy enters into recession, that's when then also, as we get closer to that point, that is when also just the overall term level of interest rates starts to drop more precipitously, as well as then when the Fed starts to cut rates, then those short-term rates drop significantly, and then the curve shape could return back to a more normal shape, which is an upward sloping. So that being said, we think we're at this turning point here from an investment standpoint of wanting to get ahead of that, which we have been of that position here for the last several months, basically since that high point in October. This chart here just shows what can happen when the Fed does start to cut rates. This is the Local Government Investment Pool Index, which is an indicator of opportunities, liquid opportunities available to public entities nationally. Star Ohio is included in this index, and we can see that when those short-term rates top out and then the Fed starts to lower rates, that drop in those short-term rates can be very abrupt. This all occurs very quickly. So again, just looking at history, kind of as a warning of what we could potentially see here over the next 12 months. So moving on to the portfolio. Okay. All right. Apologize, it's my first time being in charge of the remote here. That would hold true at home too, but we won't go there. But any event, this is the county's investment portfolio as of the end of March. Of course, at the end of March, this would have been after the Treasurer's Office had collected significant real estate taxes. It's not completed settlement, so of course the cash piece is rather high relative to where it would land here over the next couple months. The $182 million does include also the $41 million that is attributable to the engineers and utilities as well. So at the end of March, the portfolio was comprised of $243 million, almost $244 million of investment securities, giving a total portfolio of $426 million combined. So the securities portion, and when we look at the asset allocation, we are diversified in the assets that the county's funds are invested in. These securities are all permissible under Ohio Revised Code as well as the county's investment portfolio. And as we look to place investments in investment securities, we are looking at what we call the relative value, making sure that as we are placing those funds, making that decision when it makes sense to allocate more dollars into Treasury securities versus, say, some of the credit securities such as corporate bonds. And so we can see at this point we have 24% in U.S. Treasuries, which of course are the safest investments, 54% in government agencies, and the commercial paper and corporate bonds only total 16% of the portfolio, which is significantly less than what is permissible under code. The weighted average maturity is just under 2 years. As we've talked, we would want to look to get that extended further, get it crest that 2-year period, start to get it closer to 2.5 years, so that again we can lock in these current interest rates. And what that will do for the county is provide a benefit from a standpoint of carrying that interest income, as Treasurers had mentioned, carrying that over throughout a longer time period. So providing a little more certainty with that interest income, and we can only do that by being able to reinvest funds as they do mature. The weighted average yield in the portfolio stands at 2.4%. That's up from where it was at the end of December at 2.33. And just as a reminder, at the end of 2021, the portfolio was yielding 0.93, just under 1%. And again, that was reflective of the fact that interest rates had been basically had zero for a very extended period of time. Our maturity distribution is such that if we look at the funds that we have maturing in the 3 to 4 year bucket and the 4 to 5 year bucket, tally those up. Those total about 25% of the securities out of that $243 million. The $83 million that is maturing inside of the next 12 months works out to about 35% of the investment portfolio. So again, as Treasurer Zurn had mentioned, we have plenty of opportunities here in the next 12 months to reinvest these funds and lock in this current interest rate environment that we had not seen in over a decade, and to provide further stability to the county's interest income, as well as meeting those objectives of the safety, liquidity, and return. So any questions, comments?
I would like to just state that I think the county is poised and we're in a great position. We have $140 million maturing over the next 24 months. The reinvestment rates are hovering around 5%. As you can see with the 2.2 and the 2.72, that is a significant benefit to the county. So I think we're in a great position for the future.
Mr. Zurin, I also want to compliment you and Ms. Stanek on the wisdom of the investment strategy of trying to build in some stability for the longer term, locking in these higher rates. I think that will be very useful as we go forward in planning. I know there's a lot of excitement about the higher interest income that's being generated, and that's the direct result of the hard work that you and your colleagues have made together. Obviously, these are projections because Lake County acts as the banker for all the county agencies, including Deepwood, and they may or may not spend some of these monies this year, as well as non-FDIC insured investments. We can't be 100% sure that all bills will be paid on time, but the projections look good, and that comes as a direct result of your hard work. If I could sum up your economic outlook so that you can essentially affirm for us that we're understanding the presentation you shared. It sounds like big spending today equals bad things tomorrow.
Yes.
And that the inverted yield curve is further evidence that if we're not already in a recession, we're going to be experiencing one soon, which is precisely why Lake County and other responsible local governments are being very careful with their budget. The federal government prints money, but we're stuck within what we actually have. And given that we live and die by sales tax and property tax collections, if the economy takes a serious downward turn, we could be facing substantially lower revenues in other categories.
I would agree. That is correct. Very good. Thank you.
So, any other new business or questions for our regional director?
I don't have any, but thank you for the presentation, and
Thank you.
I see that the outlook is pretty much going to be normal as we know today.
Thank you.
Then, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Then we are adjourned at 10:22 a.m. and we will roll into our regularly scheduled commissioners meeting as soon as our colleague joins us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. Good job.
Good morning. Okay. All set? All right. And with that, as indicated, we'll begin our 15th meeting of the Lake County Board of Commissioners. Thank you for joining us. Would all those who are willing and able please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Grant us, O Lord, light to our understanding, prudence in our investigating, foresight in our planning, sincerity in our deliberating, the grace to follow truth in our judgment. Help us to be moved in our decision, neither by fear nor by self-interest, and to do our work faithfully. May we respect the authority vested in us, for thou art the source of all authority, and may we use in our directives for the common good, and for thy honor and glory. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Present.
Commissioner Regovich,
Here.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Here. Okay, we have before us the meeting minutes of the regular meetings of January 19, 2023 and February 14, 2023. Can I have a motion to approve same, waiving the reading thereof?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Thank you. Any changes, any discussion? No? Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes. Okay, this brings us to our first public comment portion of our meeting. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the board? Oh, sir. Sorry, Brian, new face. Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much. My name's Tony DeBevick.
Is your microphone on, sir?
If you will. Pardon?
Is your microphone on?
I can't hear.
I don't know.
Oh, there we go.
There it is. Is that it? Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Thank
I'll start again. My name's Tony DeBevick.
I represent a few winery operations in Madison Township, and I'm here today to defend our family's name and reputation as a 52-year-old agricultural business in Lake County, Ohio. My grandfather, Anton DeBevick, immigrated to America from Slovenia, the state of Austria, in 1914, and he came here to escape cannon fodder for the German army in World War I. In 1916, he purchased a 90-acre fruit farm on Doty Road in Madison, Ohio. He cleared his land by hand, raised 4 children, one of which was my father, Tony J. DeBevick. My father purchased the adjacent grape farm in 1941 to raise his family on Doty Road. He worked 2 or 3 jobs to pay off his debts and to send his children to college. My sister and I were raised by strict, hardworking, ethnic parents from the poor side of town, back then called South Madison. In 1971, I served in the U.S. Army as a first lieutenant paratrooper. I came home to start Chalet Debonais Vineyards with my parents, Tony and Rose DeBevick, and then my wife there on Doty Road on our farm. In 1971, the DeBevick family winery almost didn't happen. It took the Lake County public officials to convince Madison Township officials that the DeBevicks had the legal right to open a winery using their grapes they cultivated on their own farm. In 52 years, nothing has changed at Debonais Vineyards or its associated facilities that would continue to maintain our legal right to be established as an agricultural business under Ohio Revised Code 519.21. We have existed within the laws and regulations of Ohio's Revised Code, the Health Department, the Lake County Building Department, zoning rules for the past 50 years. Only since the opening of CAS 307 was there an issue with the new code violation involving a local fire department's new interpretation, a real catch-22 for all wineries in Madison Township. An opinion that is totally different than that of the authorities of our neighboring Ashtabula County. The state fire marshal has made it very clear that the code violation is a local decision based on local ruling and not a statewide mandate. Our business model has always been about safety of our thousands of loyal customers and 50-plus employees. This is the main reason why we're complying with the new requirements imposed upon us today. As the first winery to be established in Northeast Ohio after Prohibition, our family has led the industry in many ways. A few examples is that we were on the founding boards of the Ohio Wine Producers Association, the Ohio Grape Industry Council, State of Ohio, Wine America, the largest wine organization in America, which I helped start, Lake Erie Wine Alliance, the Grand River Wine Growers Association, and the Wine Growers of Ohio Lobbying Group out of Columbus. In 1980, the DeBevick family applied for a new appellation of origin. Our region was applied in the Federal Register for that appellation of origin. It stated that the Ohio Wine Producers Viticulture area will now be known as the Grand River Valley by federal regulation for the labeling and the sale of our state regional wines. I only state these facts to clarify that our family came where our family came from and prospered. We are a family that has resided in Lake County for 107 years. Our success came from hard work, family structure, and a passion for viticulture and winemaking. We have lived the American dream and are proud of our business accomplishments within the laws of Ohio and America. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Massey.
Brian Massey, 8196 Rainbow Drive, here on behalf of Lobbyists for Citizens. I know I only have 5 minutes, so I'll save most of my discussion regarding the jail for the second public comments. But I'd like to bring up item number 7 that's on the agenda today that talks about the resolution authorizing the Lake County Administrator to execute a memorandum of understanding on behalf of Lake County Board of Commissioners and Lake Lakeland Community College for the creation of a workforce development position at Lakeland Community College. I've never heard of any discussion about this particular position, and I come to a lot of meetings. But what I did get, I did receive a notice that at the last Lakeland board meeting, Miss Amy Sabbath stated this. It was a presentation to the board that a new 501c organization, the Lakeland Institute, will be created to allow Lakeland to partner with other local nonprofits and provide courses, seminars, and other training specifically for nonprofit administration and fundraising. The commissioners have tentatively agreed to provide $75,000 per year for the next 3 years for this purpose. Now, what Ms. Sabbath is saying, that somebody's already made a deal, for this, and it's never been discussed in public. I'm just wondering if that is really according to the rules, and if it is for workforce development, is that in conflict with Corey Vorjak, I believe that's his name, that is already Lake County's workforce development? My concern is that we continue to grow government. Also, when I see the report from the investment advisor, I notice the number keeps climbing, 428. It was only a few years ago that was under 200 million. So as a county, we're continuing to grow. With all our cash reserves. And our people are really hurting out there. So our government is growing. And you gentlemen profess to be, conservatives. I also found out that there's 3 citizens employed by Lakeland that are making $75,000 a year as something called executives in residence. I've asked for a public records request for their contractual obligations with the Lakeland and what's their job description. So I ask that you rethink about passing that resolution for a workforce development with Lakeland Community College. We don't need bigger government. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, anyone else wishing to address the board? Sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Mara, 39 Minnewawa Drive, Timberlake. A couple things. I watched the work session from a couple days ago twice, and before hours of my life I'll never get back again, but well worth it. There were a lot of points that I'd like to bring up, concerns that I have basically. I saw that they were trying to look for money to pay for this jail, and I understand that because, again, it's a large project, but I wonder if anyone considered, first of all, I know the end game is going to be raising the taxes ultimately, because we're going to see that we don't have enough, obviously, and that we're going to have to raise taxes, which obviously I think will hurt this Lake County tremendously. The sales tax obviously will hurt every business and every resident all the way through from the top down. Number 2, if we go into the inside millage, that'll hurt all our seniors and as far as with the property tax. So what I was wondering is, first of all, if there's any way that anyone looked at it, any cut in any of the fat in all those resources that we have, all those areas that we have. I know we're looking at trying to get money out of, if there's extra money out of them to fund the jail, but what I'm looking at is if there's possible ways of getting some of those areas trimmed. I know that in our village we had a very tight budget, and we were able to come in way under the budget just by looking at a lot of services and where we can actually save money on. So that'd be one. I think it would be prudent to look at those areas. Number 2, the jail, I know it goes from 140 million, now it's up to 170 million. It's just going to keep climbing. If we're trying to find money to throw at this thing, we're never going to find enough money, because if we're going to have that type of attitude, I don't understand, because it was brought up yesterday or 2 days ago, that 60 to 70% of the inmates are drug users, okay? They need drug rehabilitation. So why are we building a bigger jail to house drug users when we should basically be building a rehab center for them and maybe use the opioid money to build a rehab center, and instead of putting them in jail, get them out of the jail into the rehab centers, and so when they come out, they can be productive citizens without a drug problem. So that would be number one, and so we can utilize that drug money that we have. And plus, save money on the jail. I don't think we need to build that big of a jail. Why have to go that big? I understand, you know, we need to prepare for the future, but this jail's not even 50 years old, and we're already rebuilding it. So it didn't even last, you know, where it should last. So why are we building a jail that's maybe gonna last us 75, 100 years, but then again, we're going to outgrow it maybe in a few years, or we're spending all this money now. You know, again, if we need the money, we'll get it later. I mean, right now, we should just build what we need, and then if we do need money later to pay the bill, we can always raise the tax later, but not now. I mean, that could be the 5-year down the road plan. But right now, if we raise taxes, obviously, it's just going to hurt our economy and hurt a lot of the people that live in the village. So, plus not to mention, when the sales tax alone is already pretty much inflation-proof. So as the inflation goes up, we're going to increase that revenue on the sales tax, and also even the property taxes as inflation goes up. So I mean, that needs to be calculated. So just some other ways, but I'll address more of it later at the next session. But thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Sir? Good morning.
Morning. John Music, 45 Covent Drive, Painesville Township. As you've known, I've spoken a lot about this, and I do support, we must give the tools to our law enforcement to do their job. It's a must. That's our number one priority, like I've mentioned to you. When you say the Pledge of Allegiance, with liberty and justice for all, when you say the state of Ohio, the U.S. Constitution, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. That's number one. I mean, we talk about crises. You imagine what's happening throughout our country right now? And as we all know, just recently we had the drug cartels a few blocks away from here. We've had shootings here, and it's here. Hey, there was a sign on the post office, and I brought you a picture of it. Due to safety concerns, the post office in Painesville will be only open certain hours. Safety concerns in our post office. So I finally got in touch with the post office, and they had swapped and so forth. Finally, another person told me what they've actually talked to them. And you talked about crises. I mean, trust me, I don't want anybody to be in a crisis. Anybody, you know, we hear about crises in California. Oh, it's a name. But when it becomes a family, mother, father, child, it makes a big difference. And the thing about it is, that person in California still has a mother, father, and so forth. That is their crises also. So, you know, crises to all. We don't want anybody. Without law enforcement, we will not have a country. We will not. And like I've said before, without military at the federal level, military and law enforcement, state, we have the National Guard and their law enforcement. And here in the county, we only have the law enforcement. This is your number one priority. It's the people, like I said. And just as a result, I just want to mention a few things, and just like I've said many times, I don't care if it's at the federal level, the state level, the county level, the community level, and here is a copy of the issues that are on the May 2nd ballot. Look, additional, this, that, emergency, blah, 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 blah. Okay, where's the emergency for the person who pays all these taxes? It all comes out of this wallet. I don't care where it goes, the federal government, state government, this level, that level, it all comes out of this wallet. And right now, 1 out of 4 people in Lake County, this is as a 2020 point-in-time number, was senior. They're predicting 1 out of 3. There's 232,603 people as of 2020. So just think about that. Think about the people. I got just throw one thing in. Just yesterday, I bought a new recliner with a 30% discount, $1,415. That's with a 30% discount, just a recliner. It's not the top of the line, but it's a middle of the line. So I'm just saying, and well, everybody knows when you go to the grocery store what happens. So all I'm saying is, and I do agree, and I've said this before, so this is nothing new, limited government. We have got to, just like the one item on the agenda, we don't need to make our government bigger. Right now, this is a very bad time right now for the taxpayers here in this country, in more ways than one. But just monetarily, it's tough. So all I'm saying is, it'd be nice to have this. Let's concentrate on our needs. Our needs are law enforcement and our military, because we won't have a country. We will not have a country without those two entities. We will not. So all I'm saying is limit your spending. Yeah, and I know the three of you have a tough job, and I support the jail. And just remember, law enforcement includes the sheriff, the prosecutor, and the county judges. It takes all three. And remember, everybody's presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. So let's get our priorities straight. Let's keep our money going to where it needs to go. And some of these things you're going to have to say no to that have come up. Sorry, at this time we cannot do that. So I'm just asking you, and I've told you this before, be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. And I believe these three right here, I'm using these three because they're sitting right here. They've done a good job over the years. But their job, just listen to all three of them. And it's just, I've heard Randy say many times, well, if we can get it, and I don't know what the price is going to be, and same thing with Jim. Oh, if we can get it, and so forth and so forth. And now it's harder and harder to get labor. So I just want to tell you, be good stewards and keep our government limited. We don't need to broaden the size of our government. Let's keep it smaller. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to address this board? Sir.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak. My name is William Brueggemann. I'm a resident of 5424 Ford Road in Madison Township. Specifically, I call it West Ford Road because of the recent road closures. I'm here to express concern for the lack of action to address the Ford Road and Payne Road closures. I have grave concern for the safety and emergency response that the impact on these closures have to the residents in my neighborhood. Emergency response is absolutely critical. Response time can be a major difference between life and death or other damage control. Our current situation on West Ford Road requires mutual aid by our neighbors in Perry. For Perry to respond, the distance is 13% further than the local service we would get from Madison. Okay? Consider, again, response time is a major difference between life and death or other damage control. So what if Perry can't respond and Leroy is called on? That distance is 54% further. Again, if Leroy can't respond, response falls back to Madison. Okay? And that distance, because of the detours, is over 104% farther. So again, response time. That can be a matter of life or death or other damage control. Our county engineers have also expressed concern on Blair Road's inevitable failure and needed repair. That would be catastrophic to that area if that access was closed. It took a very heavy rain last August to close Ford Road. That could happen any time to Blair Road, and we would be very isolated at that point. So what I'm calling is your inaction is essentially a virtual time bomb waiting to go off for the residents in that area. I wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Anyone? Ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Lindberg from Grand River Cellars Winery and Restaurant. Good to see you. I just want to let you know I grew up as a dairy farmer, so I know about farming. So when I became a grape farmer, it really didn't change a whole lot. In fact, not getting up early in the morning and milking cows was a nice break. But it is still a lot of hard work. There's constant work out in the vineyards all year round. And let's not to mention picking ice wine in 10-degree temperatures. That's not always a pleasure either. But we make agritourism look good here in this county. We have it booming in all aspects. Our hotels, our gas stations, our restaurants, our retail stores, they're all benefiting from this agritourism of the wineries. One time I went to the bank on a Monday and the teller told me, and she probably shouldn't have, she said, "I don't know what's going on this weekend, but everybody's bringing in tons of money." That made me smile. It was March, and we had just had our first Ice Wine Festival for that year. And I knew why all that money was coming in. I didn't say anything, but it just made me happy because we worked so hard for that. During COVID-19, when we were all closed down, once the governor opened us back up, Tony DeBevick decided to take out ads on Channel 3, and every 2 weeks we were on there, and my message was clear. We have blue skies, we have green grass, we have open air. And they came. We had tourism like we had never seen before. And of course, we followed all the COVID-19 restrictions. It was very hard at times, but we followed them all. And we had the two top performing hotels that year in the state because of that. Personally, I've opened my doors to the community. I host hundreds of fundraisers at Grand River Cellars. We've donated over $60,000 to help support autism in our communities. We've really not been a burden on our government services at all. We work hard to make sure. We're very confident and constantly are watching to make sure we don't overserve people. We take a lot of responsibility for what we do. We're not sure what's changed, but we feel like we need support from all of you. We need it from this level. We need it from smaller level. We need it from big level. We've been there. We've tried to grow this region for everyone to keep those tax dollars coming in that is apparently very much needed right now. So we ask for your support. We provide a service here to the community, to all the other businesses, and we take responsibility for it, and we want to continue to see this region grow in a positive manner. The Grand River Valley is here because Mr. DeBevick came up with that name, and he passed that. So we ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Sir.
I'm Chris Weiss from Leroy Township, and I want to say I'm glad to see that two of our wine producers have showed up. And just to reiterate that my comments last week, and especially as they applied to Mr. DeBevick, were in no way meant to denigrate him or the wine producers, who we all know are very capable and industrious people and are prospering quite well out there, and I applaud all of their efforts. I'm also very excited to find out that Mr. DeBevick is a fellow paratrooper, which kind of makes my heart pitter-patter a little bit. I'm also looking forward to another history lesson from our eminent legal scholar today. And as a student of history, my history teacher, I had a John Lauer at Riverside, who liked to make it fun by bringing props with him. So in that spirit, I brought a prop with me today, a Socrates costume, okay? And Mr. Plechnik, you feel free to use that at your leisure. I'm hoping we might hear of some more tales of the Athenian fleet. Maybe you'll talk today about the Battle of Salamis, where they beat up on the Persians. But I have to say this, unfortunately, as you are often incorrect factually on many things you speak of, you were also factually incorrect last week in that the Greeks didn't lose that battle that you spoke of. That was the Battle of Arginose, which I have difficulty saying. 406 BC, the Spartans lost 70 of 120 ships, and the Athenians lost 25 of 155 ships. It was a victory for the Athenians, and the sailors who drowned were a result of a storm that prevented the ships that the generals had sent to retrieve those sailors from retrieving them. And that's why those men drowned, not because they were abandoned. And I think anyone who's ever served in the military will tell you, you never leave a man behind. And I don't think the Greeks ever did that, okay? So I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I might come back up for the second session, but Mr. Plesnick, if you can use this, you're more than welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Sir. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning. My name is Todd Baker. I'm the Fire Chief at Madison Fire District, 840 River Street. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak again today. I actually made notes this time, so I got some bullet points. The east end of the county continues as we did last week and the week before and going back 9 months. Specifically, Madison Township and Leroy Township need the help of the commissioners to get the repairs that are needed for Mr. Gills on Ford Road and Payne Road. And forgive me, I don't remember Williams and the numerous other roads, which, by the way, are owned by the county commissioners. They're not owned by Mr. Gills, they're owned by you, the county commissioners. The longer we wait to fund this, the longer these people are basically at risk. Mr. Brugman brought up time. That time is very real. When we're called there, that time really does matter. So the longer you wait, the longer you place these people at risk. I took the opportunity to sit at the budget meeting or the workshop on Tuesday, and what I found interesting is we're having a debate whether we can fund the needed repairs on Ford Road and Payne Road and to meet Mr. Gill's financial requests from the county commissioners. But when I sat here Tuesday and I listened to the jail and I listened to the passion that some have about building a new jail and how important it is, I also listened to them talk about the potentially $100+ million in monies, not that necessarily would be moved, but potentially could be moved in funds. And I scratched my head and just thought, well, the money's available for a jail, but apparently that money isn't necessarily available for the few hundred residents that are impacted, the few hundred voting residents that are impacted by these road closures. I also listened at the budget meeting about discussions, and Mr. Matus was here and talking about what payments would look like, and they showed, you know, if we put X millions of dollars as down payments, what that looks like as far as a bond payment. You know, it's a terrible time to take out a bond, by the way. We did it 5 years ago and got 2.2, and sadly, the way the economy is, you're looking at 5. That's a huge difference in interest. I can tell you, we refinanced our fire station 5 years ago, cut the term in half, cut the bond rate to 2.2, and saved our taxpayers $900 million in interest. I'm sorry, $900,000 in interest. I just wonder what that translates to in the jail. But when we looked at that, and I took those notes and went home and thought about it, I remember the one number was $50 million down, a 30-year note or a 30-year bond, a $7.8 million a year bond payment. And if you do the math, that means that this jail potentially cost the taxpayers of Lake County over $280 million. And in different terms, I'd like to put it in this perspective because this makes it sound even worse. 2 of the 3 of you have the ability to put Lake County over $250 million in debt. 2 people. 2 people out of 230,000 residents are going to make that decision. That's a pretty big decision. So I hope you think about it. The other thing that I thought about is when they talked about the $70 million budget that the county has. $70 million. $7.8 million in a bond payment is more than 10% of that operating budget. I also listened to them talk about how the bonding agents want to know how you're going to continue to pay that $7.8 million over the course of 30 years. And I just can't help to wonder, as a resident of Lake County, how are we going to not go over budget to pay that $7.8 million year after year after year without, as somebody already brought up, raising taxes? I support our businesses. I support economic development. That's a significant amount of economic development that we're going to need over the course of the next 30 years to meet these expectations. The other thing is, I talked to somebody after the meeting, and apparently 60 to 65% of that budget is staffing and salaries. What's going to happen to the cost of staffing and salaries over the course of the next 30 years? What is 3%? What does a 3% increase in 60% of our total budget look like as it compounds annually on itself? What position does that put us in to make a $7.8 million bond payment? That really is concerning, because coming back to the reason I initially came to these meetings, my genuine concern is for the residents of Madison Township and Leroy Township who have a lack of access to public safety. I happen to be impacted by the closure. Mr. Bruggeman happens to be my neighbor. And I can't help but think, when we make such a commitment, what's the time frame going to be to make those road repairs? Because Blair Road's going to go down, and we're not going to have the money for Blair Road. I don't want to put Mr. Gills on the spot, but I'm sure there's a lot of county roads that are going to go down. So I want to make it clear that I'm here as a public safety servant, and I'm here because of a public safety concern, and I really, really, really would like to see the commissioners make this a priority. Unfortunately, I'm also here to address some other things that have come up, because again, in speaking about my concern for funding, I did bring up some of the commissioners' conversations about water lines and archways and things that promoted business, and I'm not opposed to promoting business, but I'm very opposed to neglecting residents who pay taxes. I think if this road was in Willoughby, and I know you don't own county roads in Willoughby, but I think if this impacted 25,000 people, this board would be much more attentive to making the needed repairs. So at the last meeting, I was unable to attend. I sent the captain here to make a statement, and I just wanted to address a couple of defamatory comments that were made by you, Mr. Plechnik, that were absolutely inaccurate. And the first was, that you talked about saying that you were concerned about a fire district that was not working with businesses and trying to kill businesses and drive them out of the county, or something to that effect. And the reason I'm standing up and take it personally is because I'm not sure if you're aware, there's only 2 fire districts in the county, Madison and Perry. Perry doesn't have anybody that's in conflict right now from a business perspective. So I did take that personally. And one of the things that you said that was false, absolutely false and defamatory, was that the fire district had continued to find businesses in its jurisdiction. And what I want to let you know, Mr. Plechnik, I've been with Madison Fire for 34 years, probably nearly your entire life. Madison Fire District has not one time fined a business. The fines that you're probably thinking of are because we are trying to follow the Ohio Fire Code, and we cited a business. The business chose to make an appeal. They appealed it to the Ohio Board of Building Appeals, which is perfectly within their rights, and we supported that appeal 100%. And Mr. Plechnik, it was the Ohio Board of Building Appeals that upheld the citation and that issued the sanctions against the business. It was not Madison Fire. Madison Fire had nothing to do that. We gathered no funding from that. We got nothing. In fact, you also went on to speak about how we're not working with businesses. And I can tell you that I sat down with the business owner that the Board of Building Appeals fined, and I, as well as the fire board, made a commitment to work with the businesses to go back to the Board of Building Appeals to ask them to waive the fines. I call that working with business. So I take great offense to defamatory comments and negative comments about a public safety organization that is simply doing what it's tasked to do by the Ohio Revised Code. I'm offended at the fact that you called out the captain who came here on my behalf to read a letter. I think the government has open public portions so that people can comment on their concerns, and the fact that I have a concern about public safety and that I have a differing opinion on how you want to spend your funding is my right, not only as a public servant, but it's my right as a resident of Madison Township. You mentioned that negative business environment, and I'm assuming that that negative business environment that you speak of is because we're trying to uphold the Ohio Fire Code. And I know there are people that are asking questions as to why now. I can't speak for my predecessors, and I cannot speak for what happens in Ashtabula County. What I can speak of is our legal department. Yes, our law department has reviewed every action that's been taken. They've made their interpretation of the law, and we've looked at the Ohio Fire Code, and we are treating businesses in Madison, whether they're on agricultural property or zoned commercially, as what they are identified in the Fire Code, and that is an Assembly 2. So for you to make a comment that we're creating a negative business environment, I take offense to it. If other communities aren't doing fire inspections, then that's their fire chief's responsibility. The other thing, and I think Commissioner Hamercheck brought it up, you mentioned how you were wasting time defending businesses and going to the state to try to make corrections and change the law. And you're right, there are. I mentioned Senator Serino and Representative Callender by name because both of them are sponsoring a law or sponsoring legislative changes that make changes to the Ohio Fire Code and the Ohio Building Code. They're making those changes probably because of some of the conflict that occurs, but that in no way indicates that what we're not doing is following the law. We are following the law. As a law professor, I would certainly hope that you would research before making such public comments. When I made my comments, it was not slighting them. I actually think that we should be doing a lot of other things in the state legislature besides looking at that. We have 5 other businesses in agritourism in our jurisdiction that are all compliant. I mean, we're holding everybody to the same standard. We're trying to do what we're tasked to do by law. You mentioned that you could send a employee of the commissioners to a fire board meeting to ask why we're killing businesses. Here's a question that I would ask. You obviously know of the dispute. You didn't contact me one time. Not one time. Commissioner Hamercheck did. But yet you sat up here in a public meeting and gave one side of an argument without ever contacting the department involved in the dispute. I would think if you were trying to solve problems, as Mr. Hamercheck or Commissioner Hamercheck did, you would sit down with both sides and see if we couldn't come up with some sort of resolution and understand where the challenges are. I can tell you that there's a very simple solution. The simple solution is the law allows the building official having jurisdiction, the Lake County Building Department, it allows them to either inspect or not inspect these type of occupancies. Lake County has decided not to. We have a winery in Madison right now who's in a predicament because they've complied with every code that they can and they happen to have a bed and breakfast and they're not going to be able to complete their state inspection. Why? Because they don't have an occupancy permit. And the state says that's the owner's problem and we're defending the owner. Again, we're working with business defending the owner. The owner has complied. It's because the local building official having jurisdiction does not decide to do fire inspections or, building inspections or plan reviews, which means this gentleman can't get an occupancy permit. That's not a fire department problem. As the gentleman talked about, we're growing bigger government. This is a bureaucracy problem because we're creating layers upon layers upon layers of bureaucracy that doesn't communicate between agencies, leaving sometimes the business owners the ones holding the pile of done in their hand. So I hope that you would work as hard with us, the public safety officials who are trying to do their job. I have not once heard anybody complain about the sheriff's department issuing citations for speeding. Right? And I think if somebody said, this is a bunch of crap, I got a speeding ticket and somebody else was speeding and they didn't get caught, well, that's not a legal defense. I think you know that. Your comment about public safety officials coming here and making political statements is also quite offensive. If me defending the community that I'm sworn to serve is a political statement, then I'll own that. But I'm going to circle right back to the reason that I started coming to these meetings and I'll continue to come to these meetings. Your inaction on repairing the roads that you own is your liability and it is placing the residents that I'm sworn to serve at risk. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else wishing to address? Anyone else? Sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ken Gautner, Madison Township Trustee, Chairman of the Madison Fire District, and retired Lake County Administrator for 20 years. I want to say first, I am very proud that Todd Baker is my fire chief. He's excellent. He knows what he's doing, and he looks out for the best interests of the people in our community. First, I want to talk about Ford Road, because I'm here representing all my constituents once again, and I'm going to be here representing them until we get this damn bridge fixed. The people on Ford Road deserve better treatment. I said it at the meeting 2 weeks ago, and unfortunately I missed last week's meeting, though I got to listen to it as I drove down the Indiana Turnpike and found it rather amusing at times. Madison Township, as I said a few weeks ago, we've saved this county millions of dollars. We have our own police department. You don't have to pay a dime for police patrol in the township, in Madison Township, like you do in the other 4 townships. Our police budget this year is $3.2 million, so there's at least $3 million you're saving, and we can't get you to fix a bridge. I sent you a letter on March 31st of 2023, and I pointed out, as I listened to some of the comments, especially from Commissioner Pleshnik, he acts as if the bridge and Ford Road are under the ownership of Mr. Gills. Mr. Gills doesn't own that bridge, and he doesn't own that road. Ohio Revised Code's very clear. 553501B says that the Board of County Commissioners, you're responsible for the roads and bridges. He's only responsible, he's only tasked under Ohio law with maintaining them. He's not tasked with owning them. Like every other building you have in this town, in this county, you have to maintain them. You have to fix them when they break. When the roof starts leaking on the courthouse, you have to go over and fix that. The county engineer has been put in an unfortunate situation by the state of Ohio. They've cut back the amount of money that he receives. He only gets about $1 million a year, I believe, Jim, for capital improvements, if I remember what you said. That $1 million a year isn't going to fix much. So I really ask the commissioners, you need to look at the public safety aspect of this. The people on Ford Road, the people on Payne Road, they need your help. They're your roads, they're your bridges. Jim doesn't own them, you do. You're responsible to fix your buildings. You're responsible to fix what you own. And not to do that, it almost I think there's a legal term, misfeasance or nonfeasance. You have an obligation to fix those things, and you're not doing it. I even wonder what Corsa would think if they found out that you weren't addressing some of these issues. Now, those people who don't know what Corsa is, that stands for the County Risk Sharing Authority. They're the people that insure you. I dealt with them for many years. I think back to 2006, and there was a bad flood, especially in the eastern end of the county. And in 2006, we lost a number of bridges in the eastern end of the county. We lost one at the end of Ross Road, and we lost a big one on Doty Road. Matter of fact, I'm glad Mr. DeBevick is here today, because when that bridge went out in 2006, it was totally wiped out. And if you know anything about Madison and you know anything about that area where Chalet Debonair is, there's really not too many ways in, especially in the winter. You go out Doty Road, you go over the bridge. If it's nice weather and it's summer, you can go down County Line and you can get there. But Harpersfield Township closes County Line Road in the winter because the bridge isn't that great and the road isn't that great. So the only way to that business is from 534 in Geneva. You have to go way around. And I remember the day after that bridge went down, I got a phone call from Mr. DeBevick. I was sitting in the commissioner's office, in my office, and he got rather irate with me. And he wanted to know when we were going to fix that damn bridge. He was really upset. And I've known Tony for years, and I have a great respect for him and his business. But I saw a side of him I never saw before. And he tore into me because we weren't going to fix that bridge right away. And I tried to explain that we had to go through FEMA, as I remember, Jim, and we had to get FEMA money to replace that bridge. And the same thing with the one at the end of Ross Road. So there weren't many ways to his winery. And I think Mr. DeBevick can tell you that had a great effect on his winery and the people living out there on Doty Road as far as getting service from the fire departments and what have you, because they were literally landlocked. You couldn't get there from Ross Road because that bridge was out. You couldn't go down County Line Road in the winter because that road was closed. So you had to go all the way into Geneva, into Harpersfield Township, and out 534. So think about that. I wonder today if that bridge on Doty Road went out, if we'd be jumping all over the place to get it repaired right away. But there's no winery on Ford Road, so the heck with it. Heck with those people. They're going to have to wait. We got a jail to build. And I understand you got a jail to build. You know, the jail that was built, I was here when we built it. The commissioners built a minimum facility that the state of Ohio would allow them to build. No, it's not fancy, it never was. It wasn't going to be the Taj Mahal. They wanted a building that met the minimum state standards for a jail. They weren't building any niceties in it. Does it have its problems? Absolutely it does. I was talking to the sheriff earlier, and it's got problems. It had problems when I was here. It's not the greatest building. It's unfortunate that in I think it was 2011, it was after I retired, that the county commissioners, and there's nobody up here to point the finger at, they shut down a minimum security facility that we had built on Blaze Nemeth Road. That building was built in 1999-2000 to take the load off the jail so that we could put misdemeanors and get them out of the jail so that we have more room for the more serious felons. Unfortunately, the commissioners at that time, they were still fighting a big budget crunch at that time because of the Great Recession of '08, and they shut down the misdemeanor facility, and now NeoCap's in there. That's unfortunate, and that's nothing that any of you had anything to do with, but there was some thought process even back then that we've got to make more jail space. So I ask you to please reconsider. These folks on Ford Road deserve better. Madison Township has saved you millions of dollars since 1967 when we started our own police department. And we actually had a constabulary before that. That bridge needs to be replaced. There's people's lives that are in danger, and they need to be treated better than they're being treated. And I hope that you find it in your budget somewhere, and I know how difficult it is to do budgets. I did them for 20 years. It's not easy, but you got to find a way. Lastly, I want to talk about Chief Baker pretty much took away my thunder, but I'm going to back up what he said. I have his back. You know, the Madison Fire District is made up of 6 elected officials, 3 township trustees, 3 village councilmen. The township trustees haven't changed on that board in 10 years. We've had the same township trustees since 2013. Village council has changed. We've had a different mix, as Commissioner Hamercheck knows as a former village councilman. He knows that we've had different people sit on that board, different councilmen. But the one thing all 6 of us have been in absolute 100% agreement is that we need to enforce the fire code. And that's what the chief does, and that's what the captain does. They enforce the fire code the way it's written. Some people may not like it. I agree. But you know, they're doing their job. You wouldn't tell the health district, Commissioner Plesnick, to not enforce a septic system that's dumping out into somebody's ditch. This is all about public safety, whether it be a bridge or whether it be enforcing the fire code. It's all about public safety. Fire codes are written for a reason. You know, I spent over 30 years being the public information officer for the Board of Commissioners. I actually did it 10 years after I retired. Larry Green asked me if I'd stay on, and I did. And I watch with interest all the time, as my former role as PIO, what news media says to people. And I think back to a couple of really bad fires that happened in other venues, nightclubs, places like that. And the first thing that the news reporter always does is they stick the microphone in the face of the mayor or one of the elected officials and says, "Why did you let this business survive? Why did you let them operate? They weren't meeting the code. Now all these people are dead." I'm not saying anybody's going to die in our wineries, but we have codes to enforce. And I take my job very seriously as chairman of the fire district, that we enforce those codes, and we enforce them equally amongst everybody in our community. Be it a winery, be it a business down on Route 20, we just ask for equal enforcement, and that's what we do. And this fire board has backed our chief. Our legal counsel's backed our chief, as he said. And we've been to Columbus, and no, the Madison Fire District has never fined one business, Commissioner Plesnick. Never. That was, as the chief said, that was the state. That wasn't us. And I feel bad that Tony and Cindy, who I know really well, and I go to their establishments quite often, think that they're being attacked. They're not being attacked. That's not happening. I'm all about the wineries in Madison. That is our future. We have 8 wineries. I'm all about, even, we had the director of Lake County Visitors Bureau at our meeting the other night. I told him all about your archway. I think it's great. Just don't leave out the word Madison on it this time. You know, I think the whole Grand River Valley concept's a good concept. But don't take away our identity. Which brings me to one other thing, Commissioner Plesnick.
Sir,
And the chief...
You're well past the 5 minutes. minutes.
Okay, I'm gonna.
I'm so sorry.
Nope, that's okay. I just want to say one thing, and I'm gonna sit down. Commissioner Plesnik, clean up your own house. Don't point your finger at us, because we do have a winery that's being held back because of the county. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, sir. Sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Tom Hack, 11575 Fay Road in Concord. And I have not been to many meetings, but one of the things that is getting lost in all of this is that there's a golden goose in Lake County. There absolutely is a golden goose. That golden goose is our economy and the people of Lake County. When we talk about the things that we need to do to support the infrastructure of Lake County, we cannot look at the golden goose that we have as a piggy bank that we can go to at any time in order to do the things that we want to do. What we have to do as public officials, and I am one as well, is we need to figure out how to do best value, how to make Lake County the best value in the Cleveland area, frankly, and that's what's going to grow the golden goose, because when the golden goose goes, our economy grows, everybody benefits. And I think in this conversation, we're trying to figure out how to do certain things, and I agree, the infrastructure needs to be taken care of. But looking at we'll just go raise taxes and do whatever, that is not going to work. It is going to take coordinated action and negotiation and frankly compromise. There are a lot of things going on, but automatically going to the taxpayers and raising taxes is not the way to go. And if that is ultimately what the commissioners decide to do, I know 2 out of the 3 of you have the ability to do that, that needs to be voted on by the people. That should not be something that is done by the commissioners unilaterally. If you have a case to make the case and get people to vote for it. But the bottom line is that there are ways to go through and look at opportunities to save money, to create the opportunity for the infrastructure improvements that we need. And I guess I'm not really hearing that that's the case here, that we have not really sat down and done the hard work of looking at what the budget is, where things are at, and deciding how to accommodate those things that are highest priority. We need to have empathy for those who work for the county. There's no doubt we have a lot of great people that work for the county, and I'm appreciative of that as a resident of Lake County. But as much empathy as we might have for people who work for the county, we have to have even greater empathy for the golden goose. And the golden goose, there is no reason for our county government if the golden goose gets strangled, right? We cannot strangle the golden goose. So I would ask that everybody in the room, there are many people who have spoken and very passionately, we have got to work together to figure out how to take the resources we have today and prioritize things and address the needs that we have. But the automatic perspective that we should just go and raise taxes, boy, I think that is absolutely wrong. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Thank you, folks. Moving on to our resolutions, agenda item number 1, Madam Clerk.
In the Utilities Department, resolution awarding a bid contract in the amount of $352,906.36 to Monte Construction LLC for Walnut Street Waterline Project 449W.
Move to approve. Second.
Discussion. None being heard, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In Job and Family Services Department, resolution approving Lake County Department of Job and Family Services vouchers, date of warrant April 21st, 2023, in the amount of $612,318.29.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. None being heard, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In the Commissioner's Office, resolution authorizing execution of an agreement between the Lake County Board of Commissioners and the City of Mentor for participation in the Lake County Telecommunications System.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Paul, did you have anything you wanted to add, sir?
Thank you and good morning, Commissioners. Before you for your consideration is an agreement with the City of Mentor. This agreement does two things that will benefit both parties. It requires each party to include the other on future grant requests for dispatch equipment, and it formalizes the backup capacity and availability of space and equipment in the unlikely event of an inability to dispatch public safety forces by either party. We have always had these loosely agreed to, but nothing formalized. Both parties have retirements in the near future, and this agreement will further ensure that these understandings continue. Our 911 equipment is a shared system. All calls can be answered at either location or all calls from one location. Lake County has 12 consoles, Mentor has 7 consoles. Either facility can handle, frankly, all of the dispatch capabilities or requirements of both. That's what the agreement's about. I can answer any questions you might have.
This is something of interest. Most people don't understand this when we talk about central communications. Central communications is a department under the Sheriff's Office that is housed at the Emergency Operations Center, 8505 Garfield Road, Kirtland. A lot of times we talk about the Emergency Operations Center as if it's just a building and a garage. Can you maybe give us a little bit of background of the relevance of this facility and as far as the 911 wireless in Lake County and how that relates?
Sure. In Lake County, if anyone dials 911 from their cell phone device, that call will be routed to the Emergency Operations Center. The Sheriff's Department answers all the calls for wireless 911 calls. The dispatchers at the Emergency Operations Center then direct the call to the appropriate answering position in the other 8 dispatch centers in Lake County, unless that call is for the Sheriff's Department area, which is Painesville City and everything east except Madison, and Kirtland Hills and Willoughby Hills. That facility is very robust. It has backup power, it has actually 2 generators, and either generator can run the building, and it has 2 large uninterruptible power supplies that will carry the building load in the event of an outage. It's a very, very good facility as far as dispatch. It also houses the radio system for the entire county. It provides radio coverage for all police, all fire, all schools, utilities, and engineers, and as well as serving as a hub for northern Ohio for the Marks radio system. There are 70 radio towers in northern Ohio that are connected to that building. It also provides the control necessary to run the radio system in Cuyahoga County, Geauga County, and Summit County. As I said, it's a very robust building as far as its capabilities, and it is, however, possible that facility may fail, although it does not do that very often at all, and we make very sure that it's very, very unusual if that happens. It is a responsible thing to do to have a backup facility, and that's what this agreement is about, is in the unlikely event of an outage or an inability to occupy the building, whether it's a chemical spill on the freeway or anything that you can imagine, Mentor is capable, has the capabilities to back up that facility, and that's what this agreement basically puts in writing.
And one of the things that the facility and central dispatch are also most known for is our response repair nuclear power plant. Our EMA is our emergency management agency. EMA is housed out of there. Anything else you want to add, or is that pretty satisfying?
Just very briefly too, as far as the Perry Power Plant, annually we do, Commissioner Hammercheck, as you know, we have drills. Lake County has routinely, regularly, in fact I don't remember ever not scored incredibly well. FEMA and the NRC are very, very frankly appreciative of the job that Lake County does in their responsibility to respond to a problem at the Perry Power Plant.
Excellent. I'll throw a commercial in. We've set standards in the nation for quality.
That's correct, yes.
Gentlemen, anything for Director Stabenko?
Thank you.
If there's nothing further, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution appointing Chief Matt Nagel of the City of Willoughby Hills Police Department to the Lake County Narcotics Agency Executive Board to complete the remainder of a 3-year term commencing April 13, 2023 and expiring December 31st, 2025.
Move to approve, and as a Willoughby Hills resident, I just want to say we thank and congratulate Chief Nagley.
Second.
And discussion, just a little background, we did have a chief retiring, so this is a replacement for the retired chief. Is there anything further? Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution appointing Chief Jim Schultz of the City of Willoughby Police Department to the Lake County Narcotics Agency Executive Board to complete the remainder of a 3-year term commencing July 1st, 2023 and expiring December 31st, 2025.
Move to approve.
Second.
And discussion? And as previously stated, this is in anticipation of another chief retiring and the passing of the guard. So if there's nothing further, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution accepting a grant and authorizing execution of a 2021 Coverdell Grant Agreement, subgrant number 2022 PCNFS 7802 in the amount of $33,308.22 between the Lake County Board of Commissioners on behalf of the Lake County Crime Laboratory and the Office of Criminal Justice Services, effective January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Legal, did you want to say anything on behalf of the Prosecutor's Office and Crime Lab?
Yeah, this is an annual grant that we receive. No matching county dollars are required, and it supports our drug chemistry department at the crime laboratory.
Thank you, sir. Anything further? Not being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution authorizing the Lake County Administrator to execute a memorandum of understanding on behalf of the Lake County Board of Commissioners with Lakeland Community College for the creation of a workforce development position at Lakeland Community College.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. President?
Sir.
This is something that I have talked about as a mayor, and we are had many talks over several years, and it kind of died with COVID for a bit. And but we got together with the local schools, all 8 districts, and had meetings in the past about what we can do to take care of the problem that we find that in Lake County as to our workforce. We all know that everyone's looking for qualified workers, and we want to get into the schools and get into their plans to start having these with soft skills, with so they can get out of college or get out of high school, those 60% of the kids that don't typically go to college, and get them ready for the workforce. We can do this many ways with partnership with businesses, partnership with schools. Auburn Career Center, Lakeland, AWT has started their own, as we all know. So this position would coordinate that effort in order to have all this moving forward and create these workers, as I like to say, manufacture workers for Lake County. As Mr. Hack stated, this is the goose that lays the golden egg. We need to support this business, our businesses here, so that they can maintain the workforce they need in all areas. We need them in police, fire, welding, all plumbing, electrical, and manufacturing. So they would give kids a chance to look at these while they're still in high school, even if it's, hey, I don't want to do this, but I want to do this. So when they're 18 and they hit the door, they have an idea or a path forward. So this position would be the coordination of those efforts. The state of Ohio sees the need for this as they build the Intel plant. There's going to be a big influx of
qualified workers needed to support that industry, and we're worried about losing a lot of our young talent out of Lake County to go there. So we want to be able to attract business here to say, hey, we have this program to put qualified workers into your plants, into your business here in Lake County, so that hopefully it's easier for people to want to locate here in Lake County. The governor in his budget for the next couple of years has millions of dollars for what they call these hubs. They're typically, in the past, these hubs were in major cities: Columbus, Cleveland, Dayton, Cincinnati, and they're making a concerted effort to go outside of those main hubs and look to the other areas. So since we're one of the most populated counties in Lake County, or in the state, and one of the has a good number of industry and retail here, we have a great need for having these people stay here. So as our county gets older, I'm hoping to retain our talent here also, as these kids don't go to Columbus or go to those places. So this is how this all came about. We are looking for the right candidate to be able to go after those government dollars, to bring those in. That's why it's a 3-year commitment, and in that 3 years we hope that to be funded through grants and things like that going forward, and set up Lakeland as a hub to be able to provide what we need to put these kids to work right out of high school. So.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Fletcher?
Mr. President, thank you. I want to say that I support Commissioner Regovich's proposal for the same reason that School Board Member Tom Hack came in front of us to speak. It's very easy to talk in vagaries and generalities or pay lip service to the reality that taxpayers and businesses are ultimately footing the bill for everything we do. It's easy to get up at the microphone and say, yeah, I support the business community, or I understand the taxpayers pay for it, but give me what I want. I want this, I want that. Don't look behind the curtain and see where the money comes from. There's not a magic bunny tree. Ultimately, we as taxpayers and the business community are paying for everything that government does, whether it's federal government, state government, local government. Everyone is excited to spend the money. Everyone will come and pound the table and say, spend the money, cost us no object, but remember, someone is earning each and every one of those dollars. And the very modest investments that we have made in our business community in Lake County have always given an outsized return. I look at the wineries in particular, the investment that Tony DeBevic's family has made from his grandfather to his father to him, that's grown into so many other successful businesses and wineries and community in Lake County. When we're talking about the millions of dollars, that is still not enough to pay for everything that everyone believes is mission critical, that we still have to make tough choices with. Those dollars came from Mr. DeBevic. Those dollars came from the Grand River Valley, from the manufacturers and retail in Mentor, from the businesses in downtown Willoughby. They came from the residents who paid their property taxes, even though they're seniors on a fixed income. That's where each and every dollar is coming from. Now, I apologize I used the word fine rather than citation, but I will say for the record, I don't support citing the business community. I don't support citations along those lines. I believe that the wineries are safe, and we can say with one half of our mouth, I'm not worried about, or we're not saying the wineries are unsafe, but in the other half we say, well, we're going to cite them, and if they get fined by the state, I'm not responsible for it. We collectively are responsible for the impact on our business community, and I stand in solidarity with them. I'm aware that Mr. Baker emailed all the fire chiefs and asked them to come to this meeting to protest me. I'm gratified that most were not as political. I'm gratified that only one fire chief came. But if every single one of them came and said, Tony DeBevic is a bad man, let's cite him, his winery is dangerous, I would still disagree. And I think that, frankly, Mr. Gontner and Mr. Baker missed the point I was trying to make in raising the issue of working with our business community and the needs that they were bringing forward. The point is, you want to spend the money, but you don't care where it comes from. And if we don't make small investments in workforce development or in marketing our wineries or working with the manufacturers in Mentor, there won't be money for any of these priorities. We can pound the table as much as we want. And by the way, as lawyers do say, when the law's on your side, pound the law. When the facts are on your side, pound the facts. And when nothing's on your side, pound the table. The angriest people here are the ones who have the worst argument. And, you know, the only thing I'll say to political candidates who come forward and talk about how we at this DA should do better, I want to give a little piece of advice. If you're running for office, you are not going to get votes by insulting or being mean or saying that other people don't know what they're talking about or are always wrong. You're going to get votes by showing people how you're going to make a difference for them. No one wants to hear about your argument. They want to hear from you, what are you going to do for me? And the average Lake County resident wants to know that we are going to stay within our budget, that we are going to work with what we've given them without raising taxes. Now, we have obligations we need to meet. We can all point those out, and there will always be more requests than there are dollars. That's true for Madison Township. That's true for Lake County. And there will always be people who will come to meetings, because any department can, and say, if this isn't done today, people will die. We have heard it before, and we will hear it again. But if we cut checks the first day that someone comes in and says, I need $16 million out of a $70 million annual budget, then we will raise taxes. If you have that kind of spending today without any consideration, without talking about where that money is going to come from, then you will raise taxes the very next day. And everybody here knows that. I mean, to say we can just spend that money and that there won't be a tax increase is frankly naive. I have said, in line with the strong directive that we heard earlier this year from the voters, I will not raise taxes. No, I will not do it. Now, if we're really serious about addressing the problem of the roads in Madison or Leroy or anywhere, then we need to get our budget in line to know precisely how much money we have. And there are two big X factors. I've said this before and I'll say it again. We have the union negotiations with the sheriff, and I know that our chief deputy, Izzo, is working diligently with Sheriff Liam Bruno to resolve that as soon as possible, but it is a state law process. We have to go through it. We need to see what that cost will be, and we need to know what the cost of the jail will be, because we can't just dig a hole, throw some lions in there, and walk our prisoners in. And I've heard from residents who've suggested that. If you think that a pit or a jail with bricks falling off the walls or a jail without a roof that leaks is a good idea, go down to Columbus and convince them to change the state jail minimum standards. We don't have the authority to decide what the jail looks like, and we're not interested in building a Taj Mahal. We are interested in complying with state law, and that is precisely why we've worked so closely with our sheriff. If you think state law is too generous or requires too many requirements, this is the wrong meeting to attend. You got to go down to Columbus and talk to Mr. Serino and Mr. Callender and Mr. Troy and all those folks and say, change state law. All your county commissioners do is respond to the liability that the state law places upon us. And that liability will continue to grow. If the jail had been built years ago, we wouldn't be talking about a $170 million project. We'd be talking about a $70 million project, probably already paid off by now. And we'd be in a much stronger place to deal with these issues today. But I guarantee you, based on the incredible rate of inflation, if we put off the jail even 2 years, see what it'll cost us then. And everyone will look back and say, why did the commissioners not deal with this requirement from state law when it was so much cheaper, so that we have money for roads, bridges, sheriff's deputies, job and family services, water and sewer today? They will say, what were you thinking? Were you asleep at the wheel? And it's easy to look at past boards of commissioners and say, coulda, woulda, shoulda. That's not what I'm trying to do. Instead, I'm trying to impress on folks that if we just say, forget about the jail, we're going to focus on our immediate concerns today with, whoever comes into the meeting and, is the most aggressive, we'll fund that priority first without budgeting. If we do that, the jail will balloon, the state will ultimately force us to build it, and it'll be by their standards, and it'll be a lot more expensive. So, once again, I'm going to join the sheriff in saying this is not my pet project. I'm not super excited about having a new jail. I just recognize we're required to do it. And I'll close with this. You could look at many different people and say, you're the reason why the road isn't paved today. But I will say for the record one more time, You know, you can direct the ire at the county commissioners if you want to. One more time, if Mr. Gills wants to immediately address this project, he can do a bond. Now, he says he doesn't have the ability to because it'll reduces available revenues in future years. That is true. Borrowing money means you need to pay it back. Maybe not for Uncle Sam, but for everyone else, we have to pay it back when we borrow it. Now, I understand that means he may have to make difficult decisions in his own budget in future years. But if this is truly emergency, get it done. If it's not truly an emergency, then we will work with Mr. Gills with all due speed to resolve the X factors of the sheriff's union negotiations, the cost of the jail, so that we can come back, and if there is additional monies from our current budget without raising taxes, then I think I will be the most excited person to just forward that money, because I don't like being yelled at any more than anybody else. I would love to just say yes. But if saying yes ultimately means raising taxes on all 232,000 people, call me Commissioner No, because it's not just a no, it's a hell no. I am hell no on raising taxes, and I'm proud to be. And I will represent the people who are not able to come to these meetings or come once in their lifetimes. I will say one last time, we're not raising taxes. We're going to support our business community because they're the ones who pay the taxes. And if we have the money to move faster, we will. But in the meanwhile, I don't want to hear it's impossible. If it's an emergency, just pay it, get it done. And if it's not an emergency, then we're going to continue to apply for state and federal funding to alleviate the burden on local taxpayers. We're going to budget as quickly as we can so that we know if there's any money left to address other priorities, and I sincerely hope there is. I know the sheriff's office is trying to minimize cost while being fair to all of their deputies and employees. I know that we are working to minimize cost, and I pledge and promise to continue to do it. No matter how many people yell at me, I will always represent the 232,000 people first.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Commissioner Regovich, anything you want to add?
No.
Okay, so unpacking that, if I may, I have to address, in all my years, I have never heard anyone ever state that Tony DeBevick is a bad man. Even people who have challenged him on this particular issue that we're talking about have referred to him as hardworking and I think a decent individual. Maybe a bit headstrong, but that's what you get when you're a farm boy and you've served in the military with distinction. So I'm going to say I consider Tony to be a friend. I've gotten to know him over the last several years, and he does quality work. So I just want to say I have never, ever heard anybody refer to Tony DeBevick as a bad man. But just so we're all back on point, we're talking about let's see, I'll just reread this for those who may have lost track. A resolution authorizing the Lake County Administrator to execute a memorandum of understanding on behalf of the Lake County Board of Commissioners with Lakeland Community College for the creation of a workforce development position at Lakeland Community College. I will say I worked kind of late last night gathering up some more information to lock this down for today. I did get a copy of the job description, which I did ask legal to incorporate in the backup information that's a part of this so that we know what we're referring to. I did speak directly with Amy Sabbath last night just to make sure that we are not in conflict with Corey Bojack, our own Lake County Workforce Development Director, and that this new position will not be competing for the same funding revenues. This is supplementing, not supplanting. I also feel that it's important to point out that the funding for this is going to be coming out of our Economic Development Fund. I believe the public has a right to know that the overwhelming majority that's in the Economic Development Fund, those dollars are primarily coming from casino revenues. That's the primary source of revenue for our Economic Development Fund. So I just want to make sure that that source is disclosed. Again, we're trying to add and put people to work and give people yet another reason to, let's see, what was it that I'm going to use Tom Hack here? Best value. Oh, he left. Oh, well, Tom, hopefully you're going to see this on the replay. Lake County being the best value. So I just wanted to get that into the dialogue. So if there's nothing further, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In the Finance Department, resolution approving payment of bills as listed on the Commissioner's Approval Journal in the amount of $1,576,474.42.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution approving purchase orders as listed on the Commissioner's Purchase Order Approval Journal in the amount of $1,202,267.91.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution increasing appropriations for various general and non-general fund accounts.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution transferring cash and appropriations within various general and non-general fund accounts.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes. Very good. Moving on to our departmental reports. Utilities.
Nothing to report today, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Job and Family Services.
Thank you, Commissioner. I wanted to say thank you to everyone who supported the Lake County Foster Parent Association raffle this past Saturday. Thank you, Commissioner Plechnik and Commissioner Regovich, for attending. We had a great turnout, a lot of community partners there to support our foster parents, so it was a great success. I also wanted to thank everyone who wore blue to work yesterday. Thank you, Commissioner Hammercheck. I saw a picture of you wearing blue, and again, our community partners throughout the county sent in photographs to our agency yesterday, the prosecutor's office, Prosecutor Colson, to show their support, not only for April being Child Abuse Prevention Month, but also to show their support for our staff members who are in the field every day investigating allegations of abuse or neglect. Yesterday, we planted pinwheels outside of our agency. If anyone has not seen them, feel free to take a look out the window across the street at the Job and Family Services building. Thank you. We planted those pinwheels yesterday, again, as a uplifting reminder of the happy childhood that all children in our community deserve. So again, thank you.
Excellent. Anything for Job and Family Services? Ma'am, thank you. All right, County Administrator Jason Boyd. Nothing? All right. And moving on to Clerk. Madam Clerk.
The next Commissioners' meeting is scheduled for next Thursday, April 20th at 10 a.m.
Thank you, ma'am. Legal.
No reports, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. County Engineer.
I would say nothing at this time, but I may come back later when I find out what's going on.
Copy that, sir. Okay. All right, if there's nothing further, moving on to old business. Do we have any old business to come before us? Do we have any old business? All right, moving on to new business. Do we have any new business? Any new business? Okay, just in follow-up to our workshop the other day, Mr. Matus did send out the fund balances for the discussed county funds are under the general fund. I guess that's the cleanest way to say it. And again, we're just locking down actual hard numbers. But in the spirit of locking down hard numbers, though, I would ask for due consideration be given to, we need actual working numbers to know what we have available. And I took the liberty of going with the numbers I've been running off of for the last several months and put some rough order of magnitude for discussion. I think we can all agree that under the public safety account we have $40 million, and under the ARPA we have $10 million. I think we can all agree that that's $50 million.
And where I'm going with this is, as we start to try to better understand what our financial future looks like, people are asking about bonding. That's been a topic of discussion here today. I think it's best that we discuss stuff in a way that everybody can understand. And government finance is sort of a unique animal, but I think we can all agree that bonding is very similar to taking a home mortgage, getting a loan for a car. Bonding and comes under the heading of what is your ability to repay the debt? How do you pay this back if a lending institution were to say, yes, we will work with you? So just to kind of give some ideas of how we can work with the numbers we have without compromising that bonding ability. I took the liberty of combining a couple things for discussion, just so we knew what we were working with. And I'm kind of just going to call this carryover, and the carryover that I'm talking about combines the general fund carryover along with budget stabilization. What I looked at there was taking that down from, there's a general fund carryover of 8 million, a budget stabilization of 9 million. That's 17 million. What I'm suggesting for a working number, just so we know what we have to work with, sustainability and not causing bond counsel to reduce our credit worthiness. I'm suggesting that we follow usual and customary accounting practices of an approximate $70 million budget, 20%. That takes us to 14 million, which will free up $3 million that we can start to put towards projects. Payroll liability, that is currently at 15 million. I believe it is fair to say that is the gold standard. That I'm just, again, for the sake of discussion, I'm willing to say, all right, let's go back to good standard, taking that to 10 million. Payroll liability, that's, it appears plainly on the face of it, people who retire, other demands, but also keep in mind, every once in a blue moon, you get those 27 pay periods rather than 26. That money comes from somewhere. So if we go from 15 million to 10 million, that throws another 5 million, could go into the kitty. We've heard some discussion today about the Emergency Operations Center. We have 6.6 million. I'm suggesting, just again for the sake of this conversation, we would have, we could free up $5 million for that, and having 1.6 million. The reason I'm suggesting 1.6 million, at least it's a good faith demonstration to the existing users of that facility, but, and I know this is a project that Commissioner Regovich is working hard to do, is recruit other agencies to come to us for central dispatch. As was pointed out, central dispatch is housed out of the Emergency Operations Center, so I'm suggesting $5 million. And continuing on that vein, the current economic development balance is approximately 10 million. I'm suggesting we reduce that to 5 million, put another 5 million. And again, I know Commissioner Regovich, economic development is a cornerstone of what you had hoped to be doing, and I just, again, for the sake of discussion, so that we have some idea of what funds we could work with. Again, that gives us a starting point and where to go from. I'm also going to suggest that the permanent improvement, which is at 15 million, just for the sake of analysis, all in, put it all in. So if we take, again, just to tidy all this up, we got public safety at 40 million, ARPA at 10 million, we're at 50 million. Permanent improvement, 15 million. The combined carryover and budget stabilization, that's kicking in 3 million, payroll liability kicking in 5 million, EOC kicking in 5 million, economic development kicking in 5 million, that's 33 million. So adding the 33 million and the 33 million, that's $83 million. You will note, out of respect to Commissioner Plechnik, I did not add in any interest income. None of that has been included that is over and above budget numbers. You did hear me reference the payroll liability of something as obscure as the 27th pay, but that is a very real concern. In the interest of maintaining best practices, Veteran Services, they have continued to be an excellent partner with Lake County. They are asking $1.7 million. They have a legal claim to $3.7 million. In honor of and respect of what they do, I believe it's appropriate to be holding back $2 million, so that $83 million would be reduced to $81 million. There's another one that is statutorily mandated. And I believe the title for that is Children with Medical Handicaps. That's 1/10 of a mil. That's $741,713.60. If we could please, just for the sake of conversation, round that up to $1 million, taking us to $80 million of funds, so that as we start to do our analysis of what we have as far as bonding capability and project engagement, just giving us some working numbers that will not compromise the county's finances. So I hope that we can, as we've stipulated on the accounts, hopefully we can accept that. And I believe there was one other account that was added in, and I did not take that into account. Several years ago, the state of Ohio stated that medical activities, Medicaid, Medicare, there were some things that could not be taxed. I think there was a one-time payment. It's a little over $1 million. So that's in the mix. So just kind of keep that in the back of your minds. But as we go forward with our analysis, I think we should start locking down some actuals and proceed in a way that does not compromise our bond rating. So anything else you want to add to that, gentlemen, or are you okay with those as so stated? Okay, very good. All right, let me tidy these up. Okay, any other new business to come before this board? Any other new business? Okay, moving on to our second public comment portion. Sir, Mr. Music.
John Music, 45 Coventry Drive. 2006 was brought up, and I know I've spoken to this before you. I was at a commissioners meeting on 2006 talking about the flooding, okay? I live in a condo, and I've been working on this 17 years, and it still is not fixed. We talk about flooding problems, and Mr. Gills knows that. 17 years. And we used to have a woman in a wheelchair there, and a woman had Alzheimer's. If she would have walked out the back, she would have drowned because there was a big, well, now they've said it's a stream, but she would have drowned. And I sat up many nights to make sure the woman in the wheelchair, because she couldn't get out of her house if the flood would have got up to her door. So let's talk about 17 years, and now the federal government's involved, the state government is involved, the county government, the township, and all the property owners are involved. When do you think I'll get that fixed? I mean, talk about 17 years, and probably I'll be dead by the time that ever gets fixed, if it ever does. So we talk about people and having catastrophes. That woman could have drowned, and the other woman, Lord only knows, what would have happened to her. So this is what goes on. And I've read this to you before, and I'm going to read it again, just quickly. You know, like I said, definition of a good steward, and you know I said this well before you people. I could name the 3 commissioners back in 2006, and like Mr. Gautner said, he was here. And the thing about, I could say a lot of things, I could, because I was here at these meetings. And the thing about it is, you know, this is what, you know, as a commissioner, I'd read you the definition of a good steward, and like I've said, these 3 department heads, and I point to them because they're sitting right here, do a great job for us. And we've got to help them also. And how do we do that? To watch how we spend other money. Because, you know, I support the jail. My jail's my number one, law enforcement's my number one priority. We need to give those men and women the tools they need to do their job. We must. How many people are going to come here if we become a lawless community? Well, how many people will come? You see places in California closing up. Remember, we are a border community. I think thus far we've had 70,000 people come across our northern border. People don't want to talk about this. And like I said, we had drug cartels here. The SWAT team was there and everything, you know, and it was said that there was a gun at each window upstairs, but there was only 2 people left. Now, they must have got a warning that, hey, someone's coming here, you better hightail. These drug cartels are very organized and very funded. And you ever talked to the angel moms and dads? I have for years. I've met with these people. They've had family members killed by people who were not in this country legally. And it was, the gangs, they just don't shoot you. They just cut your fingers, your hands, maybe a leg, and then they'll just let you bleed to death. They don't just come up and shoot you. Listen to these stories. But nobody wants to talk about these things. And that's why I said we have our priorities. It's law enforcement and our military. And the thing about it is, I'm back to steward. The steward basically means being responsible for something that does not belong to you. Like I always say to you, be good stewards of our dollars. Right now, our whole country is going. Just remember this. We're going to be soon 32 trillion, and I know Mr. Plechnik, and thank you sticking up for the taxpayers. And just FYI, after trillion comes quad, then quin, then sex, then septum, oct, then novem, and then decum. That's how your trillions, instead of a trillion, it would be quintillion, and it just goes on and on and on. And they're saying that we could very easily be $55 trillion in debt here soon. So the thing about it is, the only thing I am saying, be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. People say this, oh yeah, we get a grant, federal grant. Well, my money's part of the federal grant. Some of my money's probably spent in California, granted. But the thing about it is, all I'm asking you, and I've said this before, these three people over here do a great job for us. They do, and they're going through tough times too to get the work done that they feel they need to do, and it's tough for them. And the thing about, just like here, like I said, right now 67%, last time I knew, of households live paycheck to paycheck. $931 billion in debt on their credit cards. $931 billion on their credit cards, and probably most of them are only paying minimum bill. And then $276 billion in fraud and waste was in that COVID pandemic relief fund, and Secretary of Labor, Treasury, and Small Business says we'll never get that money back. We're just going to write it off. You know, a lot of it probably went to some other countries. And you know, the thing about it is, we have got to get back to being good stewards. The things are really tough right now. There's a lot of wants. There are a lot of wants out there, and like I said, anytime, in my opinion, anytime taxpayer dollars are requested, look at it, say, do I have to do it now, or is something else more important? We've got to do this. And I'll finish this with this. You know, just remember this, and this was a former president said this. The size of government and freedom is inversely proportionate. The bigger the government, the less freedom we have. We the people, remember I've said this before, we the people. And that's where we're just like when everybody's sworn in, they'll say, I'll follow the Ohio Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and so forth. And I know Mr. Hackman knows there's three parts to the Ohio government. You have the Ohio Ohio Constitution, which is the highest state law, and then you have Ohio Revised Code, then you have administrative code. There's various parts to it. And the thing about it is, and we, the people, pay for everything. You know, and I just hear this, and this. Well, it's all, like I said, all comes out of this wallet. It may be federal or all the way down to, like I told you about these levies that are on here now, and all of them are going up. You got Leroy, Kirtland, Madison, Willoughby, Wade Hill, Willoughby City, and Willowbrook all having some type of issues on there. Not all of them are money, but some of them are. So I'm just saying, it happens at all levels. So all I'm asking you, gentlemen, and like I said, I think these three people, I point to them because they're right, usually there. But anyhow, they do a great job for us. They do. So all I'm asking you is for you three of you to do a great job for the people here in Lake County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, or ma'am.
That ladies first.
Lori Bobin, 6067 Ford Road. I've been down on Ford Road, as I told you gentlemen a couple weeks ago, for 22 years. I stand here before you because we aren't just showing up and asking for money on a whim. Payne Road closed first. Ford Road thereafter within a month. It's going on a year that we patiently waited thinking we would see some sort of construction or someone taking a look at things to do something. We're not just here showing up to say, oh, we suddenly want this. We've been patient, but not just patient for ourselves. This is an emergency community situation. And if we lose Blair, they're literally stranded out there. I don't know how much more you can hear from community service and from our fire chief and from Perry and from Leroy how important this is. And I don't know that much about jails. I'm sorry, I've never been in one. I hope never to be. I don't know if this road situation doesn't alleviate itself. I might find out. However, you want to speak about complying with the state law, building your jail. I do want to say, isn't state law taking care of your road? That we also, as taxpayers and residents, along with all the businesses that are down there, we foot that as well. And we deserve to be heard. This is an unprecedented situation. As Mr. Gills brought up on March 28th, it is the perfect storm. Please, gentlemen, please, try to find a way to at least start on something. We're not asking for them all three to be addressed all at the same time. Start on something so that we have a way in and out for emergency services to get to someone in an emergency situation. I don't want someone to pay the ultimate price. And that's exactly where we're going with this. Please, figure out something to get started somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Todd Baker, Fire Chief at Madison Fire District, 840 River Street, and I'm going to continue to stand up and reiterate what Ms. Bobert, is it? Stated. Ford Road, Payne Road, these are all emergencies, and actually I think she made a very valid point that many of us have been missing. I don't know that anybody's asking for all. Start with one. Again, the roads are yours, the responsibility is yours, and we're just simply asking for help. And I can't help sitting in the back and listening. You know, there were statements made about, you know, politicians that are running for office coming here and making political statements. But what I listened to was nothing more than a political statement. No new taxes, businesses. I want to be on the record here with the county commissioners as well. I don't want to raise taxes. I support businesses. And Mr. DeBebek's name has come up. I have sat with Mr. DeBebek. I support the wine industry. We're not trying to kill anything. And we're not here trying to make a political statement. We're here trying to make a statement about public safety. You made a correction with fines versus citations. Well, that's a big oversight and a big error. But when we talk about citations, I want to just reiterate one more time. I welcome you, Mr. Plechnik, to call my office. I would be happy to sit down outside of this public meeting to have a conversation about what Madison has done and hasn't done. We have issued one citation in the 6 years that I've been the fire chief. One. We're not consistently citing businesses and fining businesses. And you brought up, you know, lawyers say, you know, if the facts are on your side or if the law is on your side, but if you have neither, you pound the table. That's what I'm listening to. The facts of the matter that are at hand that you brought up are on the fire district side. It was appealed through the Ohio Board of Building Appeals, which has statutory control. They made the ruling. You can disagree with the interpretation, but the facts and the truth are here, and I'm not the one that's pounding the table. I did send an email to the Lake County Fire Chiefs because one of the things that I'm concerned about is in public meetings when public officials are essentially saying by following the fire code and doing fire inspections is a bad thing. I thought that the county chief should show face, and I'm very disappointed in my colleagues that they didn't. But I did take the opportunity to talk to a fire chief you talked to, a fire chief that serves where you used to serve on city council. And I find it very interesting that when I talked to him, after he heard the fire district's perspective, he 100% agrees with the fire department. I'd encourage you to contact him again because I know that you reached out, or he reached out. I'd encourage you to call him again and see what his feeling is once he heard both sides of the argument. And I would encourage you to call my office. Commissioner Regovich, you can call my office. Commissioner Hamercheck, you know we've already had conversations. We are not hiding behind anything. We are standing with the truth. We are standing with the facts, and we are standing with the law. And if anybody would like to have a conversation about it, I'd welcome that in my office at any time. Again, I want to close with, please, if we can't do everything, let's do something. Inaction doesn't solve problems, action does. I understand it's a lot of money. Fix a road. Something. The community deserves it, and public safety really wants that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Sir.
Same guy from Leroy, Chris Weiss. I enjoy the fact that I can get so much mileage out of Mr. Pleshnik's words. You know, one of the most important things that was attributed to Socrates was a quote attributed to him which says, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." He was talking about the fact that he proclaimed his total ignorance and the realization that ignorance is the first step in philosophizing. To that, I would add, the older and wiser we get, some of us, not all of us, but some of us learn when to open our mouths and when to keep them shut. Not always me, but some older people do that. Mr. Regovich, you're one of those guys doesn't say much, and I know there's going to be something golden that you're going to come up with, and I know it'll happen soon. I'm going to be here to see it, hopefully. You know, I learned a lot of stuff in the Army. I learned that second lieutenants generally, they don't know too much, and if they're smart, they let the sergeants teach them what to do. That was driven home in Ranger School when we had a whole bunch of newly minted graduates of West Point Academy in my Ranger School class. And they learned pretty quickly that the guys like me, the E4s and below, who came from the Ranger battalions, we were known as the Bat Boys, carried the class. We had this one guy, a major, who was a JAG officer, decided he wanted to get motivated and become an infantryman, and he knew that he couldn't make lieutenant colonel without a Ranger tab on his shoulder. In Ranger School, there's 4 phases. You got to pass a patrol in each phase, and you got to survive a peer review. And if your peers don't think you're worthy of being in the class, you get the boot. That guy got the boot. And somewhere I think he probably went back to being an attorney or a lawyer. You know, you brought up, so again, I certainly hope that as you grow wiser, you become more politically savvy and know when not to talk and when to talk, because it seems like when you do, you just continue, you want to die on that hill of no taxes. As a soldier, I understand the metaphor, okay? I think what any politician that really knows what they're doing as a politician would never die on that hill. George Bush died on that hill, right? Lost the second term. I think that once all the facts are known, sometimes you just have to raise the tax. If it's a half a point on some sales tax, I can live with that, you know. If it's, you know, what, $5 on $100, something like, no, it's 50 cents on $100. You mentioned you don't get votes by showing what you're going to do for me, and I know that's a veiled reference to myself, and I'll take that to heart, because when I run for school board, which I'm going to do, despite the fact that another school board member illegally stole my petition for candidacy, and hopefully the law is going to deal with him on that, okay? I will have a platform to tell people what I'm going to do and how I'm going to get it done. It'll be without taxes, but I'm not going to paint myself into the corner that you've put yourself in. You're very wrapped up in your agenda, sir, and I think that you really should take some inspiration from your co-board members. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Massey.
Again, Brian Massey, 8196 Rainbow Drive. It's been a long meeting, so I'll try to make this very brief. Following up on what my friend Chris was saying, the older I get, the less I know, so I'm always going to be asking you questions. Specifically, I'd like to talk about I attended the finance meeting. We were talking about the jail funding, and Mr. Matus mentioned about, and you also mentioned about making sure that the bonding company is comfortable that we can repay our debt. So there were two items that I wanted to ask the commissioners about. One was I know Prosecutor Colson doesn't want you to really talk about it, and I won't go into a lot of detail, but there is an accounts receivable out there for the verdict of the opioids of some $306 million. And by the way, let me digress, and I would say to Commissioner Hamercheck, thank you for you. I was in a meeting about 5 or 6 years ago when it was Commissioners Troy, Sereno, and yourself, and I do remember the attorneys being there where they were retained to, I don't know if it was part of the going after the manufacturers or going after the pharmacies, but I know that Commissioner Hamercheck, you were instrumental in getting a significant sizable verdict for Lake County. So I thank you for that. I mean, we beat up your commissioners all the time, but when you're doing a great job, we want to make sure that you know that we really appreciate your efforts. We really do. And back to the bonding, is it possible that accounts receivable that we have on the books for this verdict, is that part of telling the bonding company that, well, we've potentially got these reserves, this money that will come to us that we can automatically repay the bond debt? I don't know if we've got a $100 million debt and all of a sudden that verdict comes through, can we use those proceeds to pay down the bond? And then I would hope if we've got money left over that there's some consideration about giving money back to the people. All of these meetings that I hear, we're talking about spending money. We're accumulating cash in the county because I've been to an awful lot of investment meetings and I just see accumulation of cash. I'd like somebody to say that, gee, we're going to reduce the inside millage, or money is going to be going back to the taxpayer some way, shape, or form. Then the other issue regarding the bonding company, is it possible, there is the 1.1 mils of inside millage, and I do know that generates, I've been told it'll generate $8 million if you, as commissioners, decide to tax the people without their vote. I'm not suggesting that you do that at all, and Commissioner Plechek has been very clear that he would never do that. But I'm just wondering, is that another tool that you can use with the bonding company? Says we have resources out there so that the bonding company does not have to feel concerned that we have the ability to repay. And with that, I will stop.
So you raised some legal discussions. I'm going to look to legal because there's a distinction between our prosecutor's office and outside legal counsel as it relates to opioid litigation. But sir, do you want to?
Well, Commissioner, Mr. Massey, that's a very valid question that you ask. However, first of all, our office, as you know, is not involved in that. There was outside counsel retained for that. Local attorney Frank Gallucci downtown, he spearheaded that litigation. The only point that I want to make, and I'm not advising the board in any way in my statement here, I'm just for purpose of clarification, you are correct, and it is reported in the media, Lake County and Trumbull County did obtain a verdict, but that verdict is now on appeal in the Court of Appeals at the federal level. Right. So I guess I would just like to leave it at that in terms of you can't count on any finality with that because the federal Court of Appeals has yet to rule on
Yes.
whether or not there was error.
And we don't know if it's a day or a year or how many years down the road.
Correct.
And-
But I think it's important that, again, I don't advise this board on that matter, but I always tell clients in other matters where we do represent a department or an office, we would probably not something that should be commented on in public while it's still in litigation, and the situation is still in litigation.
I understand. I just, again, I wanted to make sure that the public understands the total, what we have really looking at. That I think, again, I haven't dealt with any bonding companies, but I would say that we're in a very strong position that whatever you come up with, whether it's 50 million or 80 million as a down payment, I would think we have the ability to repay that debt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Music?
John Music, 45 Country. Just a quick, just the year, January to March, we have flooded 7 days. Okay, this isn't ongoing. I don't want you to think it's just since 2006. But it's many, many days during each year, but just it floods, and it's up to the units. Well, sometimes on 3 sides of the one unit. And the thing about it is, in my community, 16 of the 19 units are seniors. A lot of them have some mobility problems and other problems. I won't get into that. But I just wanted you to know, this happens many times during the year, and just between January and March, we've had the winter, we've had at least 7 days where we've had floods. So I just want to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir?
It is now afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Mara, 39 Minnewawa Drive, Timberlake. As I brought it before, as a contractor, I have a contractor mentality. And basically, as a contractor, I always had to be low bidder on the job, which means I had to build that job for the least amount of dollars, plus try to make a profit. I think with the jail, I think we need to take a different approach. I mean, I think what they did 50 years ago is building the minimum, what they needed, was very smart, because obviously they didn't have the money then, and we don't have the money now. We were thinking about one time reconditioning our building, which again, the jail, reconditioning the jail, but again, it would cost too much and it wouldn't be cost effective, obviously. But if we're thinking about reconditioning something of that size, why are we going to something 2 or 3 times the size? Why don't we just rebuild something just what we need? If it needs to be a little bit bigger, we just make it a little bit bigger. But like I was saying before, what I heard at the other meeting was most of these inmates are drug offenders, and what they really need is rehabilitation. And if we've got this opioid money there, we should basically build a facility for these gentlemen so that they can go move from the jail into this facility, so when they come out of rehab, they'll basically be good, working, decent citizens that basically will be able to produce and help our economy. So, and again, we have to look at all options. I mean, taxes will definitely, as we all know, it's going to hurt everyone all the way around. I mean, no one wants to hear, even though, yeah, we can always afford another 0.5%, but if you look at the chain effect, how that affects everybody down the chain, that's a lot of money to a lot of people that just can't afford it. You know, we're already being, again, hit with all this inflation and all these other taxes, and of course the deficit that our government is putting on us, but we don't need any more debt. And then again, you know, as far as paying off the debt, I mean, the future is we can always raise taxes. That's one way we can always do it. But why do it now when we don't really need it now? You know, and that's the whole thing. If we can make it work with what we have now, and then again, we'll look at it 5 years down the road. If we have to reassess, we'll reassess at that time. But I think we should really look at trying to save money, and again, even go through all those other areas to where we can save as much money as we can. Because again, being an official myself, I mean, I looked at a lot, we cut a lot of fat out of our budget. You know, just a lot of things that we thought we needed at one point, but we no longer needed. And then a lot of things changed where we didn't need one thing, but we needed something else. So we were able to reappropriate money. So I think it's just a matter of reappropriating the money to where we really need it. And if we don't need it, we can eliminate it and then put it where we do need it, of course, in our law enforcement and our jail. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Sir? You're next, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Ken Gautner, Madison Township trustee, chairman of the Madison Fire Board. I'm going to try and keep this as brief as I can because this meeting has turned into a marathon. And I know there's people who want other things to do. I just want to reiterate a couple things. Just to the mayor at Timberlake, I believe it is, the jail's actually only 34 years old. We opened it up in November of 1989. So it's not 50 years old, it's only 34 years old. I just want to reiterate what Chief Baker said. Madison Fire District has only issued one citation since he's been the chief, one. And he doesn't issue that citation without board approval. There's 6 of us that sit in a room in executive session and we discuss that issue. And we don't like citing businesses. I think Mr. DeBevick and Cindy run great businesses. I go there all the time. They're good people. And no way do I want anybody to think that we're anti-winery, because we're not. The other thing I just want to mention, in the jail, it's the elephant in the room, there's no doubt about it. There's a lot of money need to be spent to build that building. But one comment. Last week, and I heard you say it again today, Commissioner Plesnick, and I'll quote you, you said, "I will never support a tax increase under any circumstances. I am a hard no, hell no, never. I'm not voting to raise taxes ever." I kind of applaud that. That takes a lot of you-know-what to say publicly. And I know you're a young guy. You're, what, 38 years old or so. I've been around for a while. I'm the old dog in the room. I'm going to be 67 this year. And I'm not running for office, by the way, just in case you're wondering. But to be a hard no, hell no on taxes, that's a tough one. Because I don't know, Commissioner, are you familiar with House Bill 1 that's being presented in the state legislature right now?
Yes, I am.
Are you? Okay, good. I'm glad you are, because those people in the room who aren't familiar with House Bill 1, and I'm not about raising taxes. I pay almost $4,000 a year on my humble little abode in Madison Township, and it's a lot of money. And most of those tax dollars go to county agencies, by the way. They don't go to Madison. But under House Bill 1, the proposal is to take a property that has, as we all know, we pay taxes on 35% of the actual value or appraised value of a piece of property. We would pay 35% of that. So let's say you have a property that's valued at $100,000. Well, you only pay taxes on $35,000 of that value. Under House Bill 1, the proposal is to reduce that from 35% to 31.5%. So now, if you have a $100,000 home, the amount of taxable value is only $31,500. Well, if that passes, which I think it probably will, it's going to have a devastating effect on a lot of people who have levies out there, because they're not going to be collecting as much money as they used to for their operations. And for example, I know that this board has to vote on the Children's Services levy. You have to vote on a narcotics levy, a crime lab levy, the senior levy, which I sit on that senior board for you. So now, if that bill passes, you got people getting less tax dollars for their operation. I suppose they can cut back services. I'd hate to see what happens if the Children's Services levy has to start making cuts, because those kids need that money. So I guess my question is, and I know it sounds good, and it's a lot of political puffery to stand up here and say, hell no, hard no, I'm no on taxes forever and ever and ever. Well, I've worked with a lot of politicians and elected officials. I don't know that I've heard anybody say that, because they know better. They know that the day may come when you have no choice but to raise taxes. So we'll be watching to see what happens if House Bill 1 passes, because you're going to have people coming back up here needing more money for their operation. And I want to see if you're going to be a hard no, hell no then. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, you've been very patient.
Hi, I'm Margaret Bushman. I live at 5359 Ford Road, and my family owns property at 5350. The property's 5359, and I live at 5357. My question is, when are you going to figure this out? When are you going to get your act together and figure out what money you have to put towards fixing the roads after the jail and after, there's lots of demands on your for your attention and your money and your budget. But you've got to figure it out. We've been in a dangerous emergency situation since Payne Road closed and Ford Road closed, and you haven't done anything. What are you waiting for? Get all the numbers together. Use a computer. I don't know, but just get the budget in order so you know what you can do, instead of constantly getting, we can't do it because we don't know what's going on. And I thank you for your time and your effort, but I'm living in fear. I'm 71, almost 72, and I live by myself on a road where if I needed emergency services, they couldn't get to me. They couldn't get to my neighbors. And it's just not right. You have a duty, a lot of duties to a lot of different places, but don't forget that you have a duty to us. Have a good day. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Sir? It's official afternoon, so good afternoon.
Yes. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Matthew Heberbrand. I live at 403 Heisley Park Lane. I'd like to first thank you for your grant of the Memorandum of Understanding and providing those funds for our Workforce Development Director position at Lakeland. As a trustee of Lakeland Community College, this is extremely important to make sure we're training our young people, whether or not they're young or adult students, to take on the much needed positions. We have manufacturing positions open all over the county, and we greatly need this. I will note that the board was only presented this at our last meeting last week. I haven't seen the job description that you mentioned, and I'll be looking into that. I'll also note that I did have reservations about this because this is a permanent position, and I don't like funding a permanent position with just a 3-year grant from an outside agency. I want to make sure that Lakeland can sustain that on its own, because I don't think it's appropriate for us to be going to outside people and asking for money. But I appreciate that you've done it. I appreciate all of the hardworking residents whose taxes have allowed for that, though I guess I really should be thanking the gamblers in this state for some of that money. But secondly, I wanted to first thank you for that, but having sat through this whole meeting and listened to some of the other public comments and some of the discussion among this board, I feel compelled to address some of my other concerns as a resident of this county. And you're all aware, but some of this just escapes the public mind, that the executive branch in county government is divided between multiple officials. You, as the Board of County Commissioners, do, under the revised code, have authority and ownership of all county property, but in many instances how that property is used is under the discretion of the other elected officials who are independently elected. And we have Mr. Gills as an independent elected engineer. The people elect him based on his skills and experience as an engineer to know, how to fix things, what the exact requirements under the Ohio Revised Code are for him and his department, and to use his discretion and how to spend his funds in determining when and where those funds are spent. And we heard a lot about the road closures in Madison here. From what I understand here, those roads have been closed for over a year, so he did have the ability to factor the repairs of those roads into his budget request from last year. I do find it suspect that this has been brought to the commissioner's attention only recently, after the commissioners rescinded the proposed sales tax increase. And I do think that the commissioners here really need to be looking at, we've heard a lot about the budget, the issues that we have, the issues with our economy as a whole, and you guys have a lot of hard choices, and I have great respect for you and how you are addressing that. But we've heard a lot about coming together and working together. One of the things in terms of those road closures that I didn't hear the Madison County or Madison Township trustee bring up is that there is actually the potential under the Ohio Revised Code for the county to come to an agreement with the township for the township to maintain that road. I haven't heard any proposals for that, but that may be something that you may want to consider if it's something that the county is unable to, if it's at much of an emergency that the county can't put its own money into the maintenance, working something out with the township in that regard. I've heard, I do have concerns about how our county addresses the business community, and our Grand River Valley area is such a crucial part of our economy. I greatly encourage you to do what you can to support them. I do find it slightly disingenuous to create a distinction between citing, the entity who's citing business versus the entity that actually does the fine. It would be, to continue the analogy that I heard before, it would be like the sheriff coming here and protesting that, the prosecutor's the one who ended up charging the individual with the speeding violation. Don't blame me for issuing the citation. And so I really think we need to be very careful about how we address our business community, because as Mr. Hack said, they are the golden goose. The work that all of our residents do is what sustains us going forward. And because of that hard work, I want to personally thank Commissioner Plechnik for his commitment not to raise taxes, at least during this time period. I respectfully request Commissioner Regovich, Commissioner Hamercheck, that you make a similar pledge, and I respectfully request that you as a board exercise your prudence in regards to addressing the budgetary matters we have. Listening to what some of the other residents have said about, is there going to be some very tough choices. There's going to be money you have to spend. There are things that you have to do under the revised code that there's no way of getting around, but that you very carefully consider making the cuts where possible and spending the money in ways that benefit Lake County as a whole. Thank you.
If I may, if you want to hang, you may want to maybe even respond. I think it's important, though. You mentioned our engineer's request being suspect. The triggering event for that, as I've stated, as our engineer has very clearly stated, when Senator Serino said all other sources of funds have been exhausted, there are no additional monies coming, that was the triggering event. That was clearly stated time and time again. Engineer, if I'm saying anything incorrect, please correct me, but that was the triggering event.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. First of all, this is a group of unusual events all happening at the same time. Normally we get these things end to end. When you get them to end, it's a lot easier to budget. Secondly, the comment about all of a sudden it's just a surprise. No, it's not a surprise. I have back in September of 2022, I met with Commissioner Hamercheck and presented him a list of projects and so forth, and gave him enough copies to distribute. In October, I met with the county administrator and Jerry Serino, our state senator, and in quest of asking for some money. At that particular time, Mr. Serino says, well, if I will try to get you $2 million And if the county commissioners will come up with $2 million, I can't fund all of it, all what you need, but I'll fund, this is my offer. And we said, fine. I gave copies to the county administrator to distribute them when he sat down and talked to the county commissioners about Jerry's offer. And we have been looking for federal money and state money and any money that we can find ever since. The commissioners have been appraised of progress or no progress all along the way. And actually, from a standpoint of notification, this whole thing started first in 2021 when the Madison Avenue wall, which was a failure, and we did get some federal funds for in a project that we were doing in the paving that was expanded. We got permission to expand it to work on the wall. Well, before we even got started on the wall gave again, and the design that we had to be modified, and it cost an additional $750,000 over and above the contract in order to fix that wall. Very shortly thereafter, a second breach of the Madison wall occurred. That particular one is $1 million and almost $1.3 million to fix that. These are people that talk about, you got an emergency, fix it right now, no matter what. Well, we did that. It impacted our budget from a standpoint of over $2 million, which I did not have, but I scraped it up anyways. And that doesn't leave me anything left for any other emergency, which, promptly have to happen thereafter. So, my office does not get anything but gas money and license plate money. That's all we get. And that's not very much. And it leaves me very little to do capital projects. So, it's a crisis. I presented to the county commissioners, I presented to the public, and I am waiting for instructions. Relative to what we are doing and have been doing, we have been doing the technical side of things and investigating the best solution to do the fixes. We have engineers under contract that are doing plans so that when and if, and I say if, somebody decides that to make money available to fix these problems, we will be ready to go. But I can only go so far with what I have, and I don't get very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Anyone else? Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn into an executive session. There are 3 topics, 2 of which are the same. One is litigation, imminent litigation, and another litigation, imminent litigation, as well as personnel, collective bargaining. Can I have a motion to adjourn for reasons so stated, and there will be no business to be conducted afterwards?
Mr. President?
Sir.
Before we adjourn, there is one comment in particular that I want to respond to, which was Ms. Bobert's. I do think that you raised a very important point, that while it is ludicrous to propose a $16 million expense out of a $70 million budget, and it's not possible. If you went to any local government and said, take more than 20% of your budget and spend it today, they would say no. And they would say no reflexively because it's simply not a possibility. I do think, however, it is important for us to re-examine the priorities of each of the roads that are a problem right now, including and especially Ford Road, from whom we've heard so many folks. And I understand that the engineer is continuously reevaluating, but nonetheless, I would make the personal request that at our next commissioners meeting, that he presents to us, as of today, as of the best information we have, what are the most critical needs in his department. There will never be $16 million in one fell swoop. That's not possible. We're not going to lay off all of our sheriff's deputies or some such thing, and we certainly can't spend interest income that isn't even in the bank yet. However, I think it is reasonable, as we're doing the engineering work, to be prepared to also, right off the bat, say, if we could do one road today, which would it be? If we could do 2 roads today, which would it be? Now, I know that's a very controversial conversation to have because whoever road is in first is not going to be happy. However, I think we have to have that conversation so that we are ready as soon as those budgetary numbers are hammered out, as soon as we have additional resources available, whether it's from Madison Township or from Ohio, or whether the commissioners do find that after we meet the obligations of this year's budget, there is in fact $2 million left over in interest income, or whatever the case may be. I think we should be 100% prepared to go so that we're not saying, let's have another debate after the fact. Let's make sure that once we know we have the funding, wherever it may be from, that we are ready to go. So I think that prioritization is a very wise and a helpful comment. And I think it's something that we should be focused on. I'm sure the engineer already has these in his mind. But I think that having a discussion at an open meeting and sharing what are the issues with the different roads would be very useful, because we can't do them all at once. I can tell you that back pocket math, that will not happen. There's no commissioner on earth who can budget for that and make every other line item work. However, if we are fortunate, if we budget hard, if we do what we've been asked to do, which is to use the money that the taxpayer has already generously given us, and if we can squeeze somewhere else and find the money, that's what we're called to do. It's not to raise taxes. And I will just say, looking back to my friend Kenny Gottner, I forgive everything you've said in the past because I love that quote so much. I am willing to die on that hill. You will. And the reason why George H.W. Bush lost is because he didn't keep his promise, and he deserved to lose. He deserved to lose that election. And I hope you vote against me if I don't keep my promises. I don't want to be here if I'm not standing for what I believe in, and I am a hard and a hell no on taxes. I'll just say, though, much as I'd love to be tested sooner to prove myself to Mr. Gottner, HB1 is dead on arrival. Everyone knows that it's got tax increases built into it, so it's not going to pass. It shouldn't pass. But nonetheless, every commissioner here and every elected official, school board, council, state rep, they are continuously challenged. It's the easy way to raise taxes, to just go back and kill the goose that lays the golden eggs so that you can pay for everything today and forget tomorrow when you'll be out of office or retired. The good commissioner, the good public servant, recognizes that even if you have to make some sacrifices and hard decisions today, you take care of the future. So, like I said, I so greatly appreciate that quote. I'm going to put it on a postcard someday. And I'm going to say, that's Kenny Gottner quoting Plechnik.
I got 7 cemeteries, Commissioner of Madison Township. You're welcome to any more.
I'll be going to All Souls with the rest of my family someday. Hopefully not for a while, because I am only 39. Thank you. And I will make the motion to adjourn into executive session.
Second.
Continuing the discussion.
Point of order, there is no discussion on a motion to
Continuing
adjourn.
the discussion, there seems to be some unbelievable confusion between our $70 million budget and, as I so clearly articulated here today, the $80 million in funds that are available to this board. I cannot, in good conscience, allow that to go on. There is an ask before us of $16.9 million, of which $9.6+ million are hard emergencies, as articulated by our county engineer. As I have so abundantly pointed out, we are talking about life safety issues. I have said it before, I will say it again. We are playing Russian roulette with people's lives. I look forward to this discussion in future meetings. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Bregovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes, thank you for joining us today.
In the future, we should